Chapter 1174. When the old man saw that she was wearing a monk's robe, he thought that she was a little liar. But even if she was a liar, this child was too obedient. The old man had a good heart. After thinking for a while, he took out 10 yuan from his pocket and handed it to little Aju. Child, I don't know the place you're talking about. Take this money. If you're thirsty, buy something to drink. Little Aju looked at her little palm. Her little face was a little confused. She tilted her little head and her eyes were full of question marks. Why did the old man give her money when she asked for directions? I don't want money, but I have it. The little girl returned the money. Then she put her palms together and chanted, Amit Ba. Since the old man here didn't know, she would go somewhere else to ask. It was just that at another intersection, there would always be benefactors who would give her money. Little Aju reached out and patted her little head. Little White, the old man and the others must think that I'm asking for money. Meow. The little white cat sat in her arms obediently, as if it was echoing her words. Little Aju hugged her pet and sat on the curb next to her. I need to eat another steamed bun and calm down. The little white cat was speechless. This was just an excuse to eat a steamed bun. However, what made little Aju feel strange was that even if she sat down to eat a steamed bun, people would still throw coins in front of her. Little Aju scratched her big head, completely unaware that she was being watched. I found a little nun at work this morning. She's so cute. This was how the crowd posted on their WeChat moments. There was also a photo of little Aju eating a steamed bun with her little paws stretched out. It was indeed cute. Little Aju felt that it was not a good idea to stay here all the time, so she patted her little kasaya and stood up. Seeing that a bus was going from the east, she followed the crowd and got on the bus. The child really brought money with her. There was a lot of money in her tortoiseshell bag. She saw people swiping their cards and putting in coins. She also took out 2 coins, but she had to tiptoe to put them in. Once again, the child felt that her height had become her weakness. At this time, there were not many people on the bus. Little Aju found a seat and swayed her lotus root legs, looking out of the window with her big eyes. What should she do? She wanted to eat steamed bun again. The little one lowered his head and rubbed his tummy. In the end, he decided to bear with it. It was no wonder that the child did not know how to take a car. Usually, the driver would send her when she went out. Now it was her first time doing everything. Little Aju always felt that the route was right at the beginning, but later on it was a little wrong. Therefore, little Aju stood up cleverly. Taking advantage of the last stop, she asked the conductor, Auntie, I want to go to the mountain. How do I get there? The conductor thought that the child was going to Fragrant Hill, so he immediately said, Child, you've taken the wrong bus. Get off from the next stop and you still need to change. Little Aju listened attentively to the route the conductor was telling her. When they arrived at the destination, she got out of the bus. However, the ticket seller did not know that the mountain that little Aju was talking about was not the Xiangshan mountain in the capital. However, she was a little worried in her heart. How could the people at home rest assured that such a young child would go out by himself? Along the way, she kept reminding Aju to be careful. At this time, it was the most congested time of the day. It was 8 o'clock in the morning and there was a traffic jam everywhere. Many office workers were busy squeezing into the subway and buses. The old Beijing city opened its prosperity in a different atmosphere. The smell of fried dough sticks and tofu pudding mixed in the air. Everything looked so lively. The well-decorated Li family was in Master Li's bedroom. Bai Jun held his head and woke up. He could even smell the strong smell of alcohol all over his body. Bai Jun shook his head. He first moved the leg that was draped over his body away. Then he stood up and walked into the bathroom. He casually threw off the white t-shirt on his body, revealing his tall and straight back. His actions were very handsome. Only when the water poured down from above did he wake up a little. Shaolin woke up when she heard the noise in the bathroom. When she saw that it was almost 8 o'clock, she quickly kicked Master Li, who was lying horizontally awake. Get up quickly. You're going to be late for school. Master Li grabbed his head that was like a chicken's nest. His eyes met Bai Jun's as he walked out of the bathroom. Fuck Master Bai, you're finally sober. Do you know what you did yesterday? You betrayed me. Is that so? Bai Jun wiped his hair and asked Shaolin, who was beside him. Shaolin smiled slightly. No. You two bastards are in cahoots. Master Li shouted as he began to put on his clothes. Master Bai, even if you don't remember that you betrayed me, You still remember that you crazily scrolled through Weibo and said that you wanted to go down and wait for a Jew, right? Baizhuan's hand that was wiping his hair paused. It was obvious that he did not remember anything. He did not answer Master Li's words. Instead he took his school uniform and put it on. Shaolin could more or less see that Baizhuan was a little absent-minded. But in fact Baizhuan was more than just absent-minded. His chest was very uncomfortable. That kind of discomfort was as if something was pressing down on him. As long as he thought of a Jew's attitude towards Bailey Shangxie, Baizhuan felt as if a basin of cold water had been poured on his body. He was drenched from head to toe, making him unable to sleep soundly. If it were not for the bottle of red wine yesterday, time would definitely have been very difficult to endure. Yesterday when it was raining he looked out of the window for a long time. It was so long that he cut the English test paper that he resisted the urge to pick her up. In the end when he arrived at the Li family he was even more unhappy. Shaolin knew Baizhuan quite well. Looking at his appearance he knew that he was not feeling well. He patted Baizhuan's shoulder and said, "All right, we'll talk about it later. We're almost late. Go down and eat something. We'll leave immediately." Master Li also began to pack his school bag in a hurry. The three youths walked downstairs and had just sat down to eat a bun and finish the porridge. Auntie Wang ran in from afar. She looked very anxious and even her forehead was covered in sweat. "Young Master Li, is Miss here? Adieu." Master Li bit the bun in his mouth and did not forget to drink a mouthful of soy milk. "I didn't see her come over." When Auntie Wang heard this answer, half of her body went soft. Her voice immediately carried a sobbing tone. "What should we do? I've also searched the cafeteria but I don't see Miss anywhere. She's not in the room either. She didn't even come down for breakfast today." Hearing this, Baizhuan, who was at the side, suddenly stood up. That usually handsome and smiling face had now lost all its smile. It was as if the blood in his body had suddenly been frozen by something. He had never lost his composure before. Chapter 1175. What about other places? She's not at the training ground or at the small sand pile that she often goes to. Baizhuan was really anxious and anyone could see it. Because he had never been as out of his mind as he was today. Auntie Wang looked at the young master's expression and blamed herself. "It's all my fault. Miss usually wakes up at around 6 o'clock. I clearly know that. I didn't see her today so I thought she woke up late. I should have gone upstairs to take a look at that time. Maybe Miss wouldn't have gone missing." "A Jew wouldn't have gone missing." Baizhuan's voice sank. "She must be somewhere. That's right. She must be somewhere. Continue to search. Search the room in the courtyard." Based on Shaolin's understanding of Baizhuan, he knew very well that the other party had already lost his mind. Otherwise he would not have used such a method of searching for a needle in a haystack. Baizhuan had really looked everywhere. He ran back and forth in the entire courtyard. Every time he met someone he would ask if they had seen a Jew. Finally he asked about the cafeteria. The steamed buns seller said that a Jew had come to buy steamed buns. It was not even 6 o'clock. 6 o'clock? Baizhuan raised his wrist and looked at the time on his watch. It was already 8:30. He had searched the entire courtyard but he still did not see a Jew's shadow. Why was it like this? Baizhuan was born in the courtyard. He knew very well that once a child went missing, the best time to search was within 2 hours. But now it had been almost 3 hours since a Jew disappeared. Where on earth did she go? Baizhuan raised his hand and fiercely chiseled the wall at the side. There was a bang. Li Hailu, who was following behind him, was so scared that he was full of worry. "Master Bai, it's all my fault. If I had gone home to sleep yesterday, a Jew wouldn't have had such an accident." When Baizhuan said this his throat hurt. Only he knew how much he regretted it now. Why did he have to be angry with a child? He was just chasing after a celebrity. A Jew was so young and she could not stand the sun. Where would she go in such hot weather? Baizhuan glanced sideways. His youthful and handsome face was covered in a layer of sparkling and translucent sweat. Even his black hair was drenched in sweat. However, he seemed to not feel anything at all and continued to search. Shaolin really could not stand it anymore. He put his hand on Baizhuan's shoulder and stopped him. "Baizhuan, calm down. Maybe things are not as bad as you think. Think about it carefully. Is the courtyard a place where anyone can enter? Something really happened, how could we not know? Since even Auntie Wang only realized that little Aju was missing later, and she even went to the cafeteria to sell steamed buns, something bad might have happened. Master Li was also standing beside Bai Juan. The three youths didn't even want to go to school. After such a thing happened, none of them had the mood to go to school. Fortunately, Bai Juan finally listened to Xiao Lin's words a little. He turned sideways and his eyes calmed down a little. Then, as if he suddenly thought of something, he immediately turned around and strode toward the guardhouse. Get me today's entry and exit records and video recordings. The people standing guard in the courtyard were all military personnel. After all, Bai Juan was not an adult yet, so he did not have the right to order them around. Young Master Bai, we have to wait for old Chief Bai to come before we can get you the records. Bai Juan heard this and did not care about what his grandfather had taught him. He directly barged in. He was not unfamiliar with computers, so he directly entered the time segment and began to search for the records in the video library. Young Master Bai, you can't do this. The guard shouted anxiously behind Bai Juan. At this time, Xiao Lin and Master Li had a tacit understanding. The two of them worked together to block the front. Bai Juan turned on the four-sided mode. The so-called four-sided mode was to observe 4 scenes at the same time. The time he entered was from 6 to 7 o'clock. According to what the uncle in the cafeteria said, since he saw Aju at about 6 o'clock, if Aju really left the courtyard, then it must be in the middle of this time, Bai Juan said as he focused on looking at the scenes from 6 to 6:10. Those scenes flashed very quickly. The guard at the side was already dumbfounded. Bai Juan seemed to be doing some review questions. His eyes quickly followed the scenes. In the end, his mouse paused and stopped on a scene. Then he quickly magnified it to the maximum. Found it! Master Li could not help but shout. Even the guard at the side paused for a moment. Master Li looked at the video that was only 3 seconds long and frowned. Little Aju, she left on her own? After saying this, Master Li subconsciously looked at Bai Juan. He had never seen such a pale face on Bai Juan's face. He originally thought that there was an accident. But now he could clearly see that Aju had left on her own. Other than her, there was no one else. Bai Juan looked at the video and felt as if all the strength in his body had been sucked out in an instant. He remembered what his grandfather had said to him yesterday. He said, be careful. Even Aju can't stand you. Bai Juan's stiff fingers moved. It was as if even standing up had become a little difficult. At this time, old Master Bai walked in with his walking stick. He was dressed in a military uniform and looked very dignified. He first looked at his grandson and let out a long sigh. Then he took out a piece of paper. This was found in your and Aju's room. Aju put it on the desk where you often do your homework. Take a look. Bai Juan was shocked and took the piece of paper over. Little brother, when you see this piece of paper, I have already left the courtyard. The Bai family is your home. You can't not go home because of me. Grandfather will miss you and I will miss you too. I know that I'm too clingy and sometimes when you look at me you can't do your own thing, so I decided to go back to the mountain. I thought about it and I still think that life on the mountain is more suitable for me. After going down the mountain I will only be with little brother and little brother will definitely feel tired. Wooly Buddha said that we must give others a certain amount of free space. Otherwise the relationship between two people will become more and more unkind. I don't want to become like that with little brother. In the future when little brother misses me you can come to the mountain to see me. When I miss little brother I can also write to little brother. There's no phone in the mountain but I can write to little brother. The last sentence was something that the child had recently learned. There was even a very cute little paw print on the back. There were 4 words written seriously on it, from Aju. Chapter 1176. Bai Juan looked at the words on the paper. His fingers clenched tighter and tighter, so tight that his knuckles turned white. From the first day he met little Aju, he seemed to have made the child suffer. Even if he had not grown up, he was still a junior high school student. He had clearly told himself to take good care of little Aju. But in fact he had been doing something for the past 2 days. It was fine if he avoided the child, but he did not even pick her up from school. Bai Juan could even imagine how depressed the child would be. He was the one who said that she would always be family, but he was also the one who did not do it. Bai Juan bit his lip. He did not even notice that his lip was broken. In the end, old Master Bai could not bear to see his grandson torture himself like this. Let's go. We'll go to the mountain now and bring little Aju back. Bai Juan suddenly raised his head. Little Aju has never taken a car before. She doesn't know the way back at all. Grandfather, she hasn't returned to the mountain yet. We have to find her. Use the Bai family's connections to find her from the surveillance cameras. This was the first time Bai Juan had taken the initiative to use the Bai family's power to do things. The Bai family's family rules had always been strict. Bai Juan was also special among these children. He seemed to have relied on himself since he was young, and had never let the family worry about him. But now it was simply an unprecedented exception. At that time, Shaolin only felt that no matter how principled a person was, these principles would be broken because of the appearance of another person. In fact, that person would make you not like yourself. Was it at that moment that the love that was often mentioned by adults was born? The youths were still young after all, so there were some things that they had to rely on their families. To transfer the surveillance cameras, they had to go through many departments before they could get the street. Generally, the higher-ups meant that whether it was a child or a woman, they could only file a case if they were missing for more than 24 hours. But in fact, everyone knew that 24 hours was too long. If little Aju really encountered any danger during this period, Bai Juan would definitely regret it for the rest of his life. He could not wait at all, and he did not want to wait. The current situation was already very obvious. Although little Aju was not taken away by someone, no one could predict what would happen to her after she left the courtyard. No matter how good the security in the city was, there would still be human traffickers. Little Aju was only 6 years old. She was already younger than ordinary children, so it was inevitable that she would become the target of human traffickers. Even if these did not exist, Aju would not know the way here. Bai Juan couldn't wait to put more cash in the child's small pocket the night before he went back. This way, even if he got lost, he wouldn't starve the child. Seeing that it was almost 10 o'clock, as long as Bai Juan thought that the child did not have anything to eat for lunch, his heart would clench and clench. He had seen those dirty children under the overpass. They were all following the adults and asking for money from passers-by. He could not imagine how much his heart would ache if little Aju became like that. Right now, he only hoped that his little Aju would meet kind-hearted people, even if they could just give her some food. On this day, the citizens in the city did not know what was going on. They only saw military vehicles driving in front of them. From the number of the vehicles, they knew that they were from the army. Is there going to be another meeting? That's impossible. Didn't we just finish a meeting a while ago? If it's really a meeting, there will definitely be people checking on the subway. The subway is not very strict today. As a little foodie, she only lifted her small school bag, thinking that she would buy a few more pancakes later. When she saw little brother in the future, she would give them to him. Little brother loved to eat noodles, so he would definitely like to eat pancakes too. Yes. The child did not change her habit of nodding when she agreed with her own opinion. When others saw this, they would only feel that their hearts were about to melt, especially after the little girl took the pancake and put the money in the money box. She even bowed and chanted Amitabha. She really looked like a little monk. Awoo. Now that little Aju had something to eat, she became more energetic. Just as she was about to study the next route, she suddenly heard a scream from not far away. Chapter 1177. Little Aju was still eating pancakes with her head buried in her mouth. When she heard the sound, she immediately looked behind her. On the busy road, a child ran to the middle of the road in order to chase after his balloon. On the child's left side, a sweeper did not have time to step on the brakes. The driver's expression could even be seen through the car window. He was still desperately stepping on the brakes. The most dangerous thing was that there was a Mercedes-Benz sports car on the child's right side. Everyone felt that the child was definitely hopeless. Even if the sweeper could stop, the Mercedes-Benz could not. Unless the two cars collided heavily, the child would definitely not be able to escape this calamity. The one who screamed was the child's mother. She seemed to be in despair and wanted to run to the middle of the road to save her child. The person behind her desperately pulled her with his hands. He even started to hug her because he did not want her to risk her life. It was as if someone had pressed a button in slow motion. The ear-piercing sound of brakes tore through the bustling Wadayaku. Almost everyone could not help but hold their breaths. They could not bear to see the heart-palpitating scene of flesh and blood flying everywhere. But at that moment, the owner of the pancake stall suddenly felt a small whirlwind blow past his ears. When he looked up again, he saw that little Aju, who was originally standing beside him, had tiptoed over the guardrail and the roof of the car. Her speed was very fast, as if it was the long-lost Qinggong that was shown on television. Everyone was stunned, including the child's mother. They all paused for a moment. But in less than a second, little Aju leaned over with a pancake in her mouth and picked up the child, who was only a little younger than her, by the waist. Immediately after, there was a loud bang. The sweeper hit the guardrail on the side. The Mercedes-Benz sports car sped past and stepped on the brakes. The sound of brakes rang out one after another. People looked at the little person wearing a kasaya and shuttling on the roof of the car. They all covered their mouths. They were surprised and worried. And the most incredible thing was that they could actually see the legendary ancient Qinggong in modern times. Did this little monk transmigrate? After little Aju landed on the ground, the people coming and going raised their phones and took a few photos. Some people posted on their WeChat moments and some posted on Weibo. The scene could almost be described as exhilarating. When I passed by Wudiku, I witnessed the quintessence of China's 5,000 years of history, Qinggong floating on a carriage. Let's not talk about this anymore. Hurry up and look at the picture. This little monk is so adorable. His saving posture is so cool. Fuck, are you sure it's not a film crew? Another movie is coming out to create hype? Hype my ass. Wudayaku is in an uproar. If you want to see the cute little thing, come quickly. This little monk who knows Qinggong, I really want to take him home and raise him. Almost in an instant, the image of little Aju wearing a kasaya to save someone occupied the entire internet. Therefore, in some ways, little Aju was also like her brother. She would become a trending topic whenever there was a disagreement. When the child's mother saw that Aju had brought her son back, she immediately hugged her son in her arms. She cried as she said, "Thank God." The child was also scared silly by the scene just now. Holding the toy in his hand, he still hadn't come back to his senses. The child's mother stood up and kept saying to Aju, "Thank you." Aju was still holding the pancake in her mouth. She puffed up her cheeks and said, "Amit ba." After saying that, she didn't forget to bow. That serious little look could really melt one's heart. The child's mother didn't know how to express her gratitude again. She only patted her child's back in a panic, and there were still tears on her face. Seeing that the child was fine, little Aju carried the little white cat and wanted to leave. When she raised her little head, she realized that she was surrounded. That scene just now was really too shocking. Not only was the little girl's saving speed amazing, but she was also able to fly in the air with just a tap of her toes. This had already evoked the deepest yearning in people's hearts for the word Qinggong. Little kid, where did you learn Kung Fu? Can it be taught? Do you think I can learn it? I met a fortune teller before and he said that I was a martial arts genius. Feel my bones. Me too, me too. I promise that I'm also a good seedling. Little Aju looked at her brothers and sisters who were stretching out their arms towards her. Her little face was a little confused. She shook her lotus-like little arm and looked behind her. Then she lowered her little head and poked her arm with her little finger. At this time, people saw that she was injured. Although it was only a scratch, it was obvious that her skin was scraped. Little Aju lowered her head and pouted her little mouth to blow. The child did not know what was going on, but the more she blew, the more aggrieved she felt. She thought that she missed her little brother. If her little brother was here, he would definitely apply medicine for her. After applying the medicine, her arm would not hurt anymore. Now even her hand was swollen. Even if little Aju had the fate of Buddha, she was still just a child. She could not stand the pain at all, so she shook her little arm. Even if the people beside her wanted to help her, they did not dare to do it. After all, she was not their child. Once they carried her, they would not be able to explain themselves. Moreover, the injury was not serious. It was just a scratch. But no one knew. Or rather, people could not empathize with each other. For Baizhuan, if little Aju was scratched even a little, his heart would ache for a whole year. But for others, it was just a scratch. Fuck. Master Bai, look at this. Little Gangster Li, who was sitting in the front seat and scrolling through WeChat, handed the phone to Baizhuan in the back seat. Look, doesn't this look like little Aju? It was not just similar, it was simply her. Therefore, when Baizhuan saw the photo, he immediately asked someone to turn the car around. His eyes were heavy and his fingers clenched the phone in his palm tightly. Faster, faster. The performance of the cars from the army was basically good. In addition, Bai Juan and the others were only a kilometer away from little Aju's current location. However, they did not know if it was because of the accident that had just happened, but the traffic in front of them was very bad. Bai Juan could not wait any longer. He opened the car door with a bang. Just like that, he held little gangster Li's phone and ran in the direction of the shopping mall at Wadayaku. No matter how Vice Commander Zhang called him from behind, he did not turn around. Vice Commander Zhang was worried about him. It was noon and the sun was so hot that it could almost roast a person. The young master was already anxious. What if something happened to him because of the heat? Chapter 1178. It was indeed hot, especially in the north. At 12:30 in the afternoon, the dazzling sun shone down on people's eyes. It was impossible to open one's eyes in the summer. There were cars and people everywhere and there were all kinds of sounds coming from everywhere. However, Bai Juan acted as if he did not hear it at all as he ran forward in large strides. Xiao Lin looked at the noble youth in the car who would never go out to play in the summer. His food and clothes had always been the best. Even old Master Bai could not bear for him to be exposed to the sun. He still remembered that Bai Juan had once said that unless it was especially necessary during military training, he would not run out for no reason because he did not like to sweat. Xiao Lin could not tell what he felt when he saw Bai Juan working so hard. However, if there was a chance, he would definitely tell little Aju personally. The only person who can make that pampered young master Bai give up his pride is you. Bai Juan did not think so much. He only wanted to be faster. From time to time he would raise his head to look at the photo on his phone and compare his location. Then he continued to run forward. It should be right in front. Bai Juan looked at the dense crowd in front of him. He no longer thought about whether he would be stained with the sweat of others. As long as he thought of his little Aju standing nearby waiting for him to find her, Bai Juan's speed became faster and faster. He passed through the crowd that he used to hate the most. His back was already drenched in sweat, and the pure black hair on his forehead was also drenched. It stuck to one side so much so that even his vision was somewhat obstructed. Bai Juan raised his hand and wiped away the sweat on his chin. He continued to use his arm to push away the people in front of him. His hand was originally injured when he was chiseling the wall in the morning. Now that it was soaked in sweat, the back of his hand was swollen. It looked painful. Li Hailu watched from the car seat not far away as Bai Juan buried his head in the crowd and pushed them away one by one. For some reason his eyes actually felt a little hot. He had seen too many sides of Bai Juan. Some were domineering, some were sneering, some were lazy and unruly, and some were polite. Every side of Bai Juan was so perfect. Even those adults would say that you must learn from that kid from the Bai family and so on. But he had never seen Bai Juan like this. The young man's tall and straight back seemed to be in a sorry state at this moment, but his eyes were filled with an indescribable firmness and gentleness. Just how much did she care to be able to do this? Finally, Bai Juan finally rushed to the front of the crowd. Little Aju was still standing in front of the glass building, shaking her injured little arm. She did not expect that when she raised her head again she would see her little brother. Bai Juan also saw her. For some reason the child's small school bag was dirted. His hair, which was always neatly combed, was messy. His kasaya was covered in dust, and the pancake crumbs that he had just eaten were also stained on it. His entire body was dirty. What made Bai Juan the most jealous was the scratch on the child's arm. Without thinking, he directly carried little Aju up. He did not care if the ground was dirty or not. He lowered his eyes and blew at little Aju's little arm. He coaxed her, "Be good, it doesn't hurt anymore. Little brother is here. Aju doesn't hurt anymore." The little girl was originally sitting in Bai Juan's arms obediently. When she heard Bai Juan coaxing her, she stretched out her two little claws and hugged Bai Juan's back. She tilted her little head and rested it on Bai Juan's shoulder. Her pink and tender little mouth curled up as she directly buried her little face in Bai Juan's neck. Sometimes some feelings seem to be like this. We can face enemies with incomparable valiance, even those in different gazes. But when the person who loves us appears, that kind of valiance will turn into grievance. And this kind of grievance seemed to be contagious. It was transmitted from the person in his arms to him. At that moment, Bai Juan felt that the whole world had mistreated his girl when he was not around. He stood up with little Aju in his arms. The sweat on his back was still dripping and the side of his handsome face was also full of sweat. However, he did not care about himself at all. Instead he patted little Aju's back casually. Only then did little Aju see clearly that her little brother's face was full of sweat. She stretched out her little hand to wipe Baijun's sweat. She did not forget to report today's schedule. I just bought a pancake for little brother. That pancake was especially delicious. Be good. Baijun freed a hand and lifted little Aju's bangs. He kissed the child's forehead. Go with little brother to apply the medicine first. We'll eat the pancakes tonight. Little Aju nodded her little head obediently. Then she stretched out her little hand and waved it towards the ground. Little Bai, follow me. That cat was surprisingly obedient. No matter what little Aju said, it seemed to be able to understand her. It wagged its tail and followed behind the two of them. The child's mother insisted on thanking little Aju properly. Those who hoped that little Aju could teach them Qigong were all politely rejected by Baijun. His voice was very faint. His entire body was as if he had just been fished out of the river. His entire body was covered in sweat, but it could not hide the unique nobility on his body. He was like a pool of clear spring water in summer, penetrating people's hearts and lungs. My little sister is injured. I want to take her to the hospital immediately. Please make way, everyone. People's hearts were made of flesh. Seeing that little Aju's arm was bruised in order to save someone, no one was too embarrassed to stop them and ask questions. Baijun carried the little girl in his arms and passed through the crowd. Finally he walked to the side of the military Hummer. Li Hailu immediately opened the car door. Shaolin also automatically made a large space for them. Both of their hands were injured, but they were surprisingly quiet. Little Aju did not let anyone apply medicine for her. She just hugged Baijun's back. Baijun was even more serious. Li Hailu even said that if he was too tired he would let little Aju sit next to him. Anyway, the space in the car was big. Who knew that Baijun would not let go at all, let alone agree? A youth and a child quietly snuggled together. It always gave Li Hailu an indescribable illusion. Young master, should we go home first? In the end it was Vice Commander Zhang who broke the silence. There's a medicine box at home. It's more convenient at home. There are too many procedures outside. As he said that, he said to little Aju, Miss, we'll discuss your return to the temple when we get home, okay? Every night before 11 o'clock p.m., there will be a delay after the update. It's usually 5 to 10 minutes, so the beauties can just come and read it at 11:10 p.m. Chapter 1179. Little Aju didn't say anything. Baijun opened his mouth as if he was a little unhappy. When he heard about returning to the temple, his voice was deep. Who said that she was going back to the temple? If she's not going back, she's going straight home. Little Aju's little face was still lying on Baijun's shoulder. After hearing Baijun's words, she stood up and said, I have to go back to the temple. Otherwise, little brother won't go home. I'll always go home in the future. Baijun held the child's hand. It's my fault this time. Aju, go back with me, okay? Little Aju thought for a moment and lay back in Baijun's arms. She put her little face on Baijun's shoulder and said obediently, okay. Baijun curled his lips into a smile. His slender fingers smoothed little Aju's hair. The hostility in his eyes also disappeared a lot, leaving only gentleness. Master Li and Shaolin looked at each other and heaved a sigh of relief. Fortunately, little Aju was obedient and said that she would not return to the mountain. Otherwise, who knew what would happen to Baijun? Actually, there was no need to go to the hospital for such a small injury. However, when Lord Bai doted on the child, he basically wouldn't listen to anyone. He personally carried little Aju and asked her to check her arms and legs. She was afraid that the child would be hit by a car when she was trying to save someone, and the little guy would not know where it was. Little Aju sat obediently in the CT room. Her little ears were perked up and she looked very cute. She did whatever the doctor asked her to do. Baijun looked at her from the side. He did almost everything himself. Even when putting on shoes, Baijun bent down and tied them for Aju. Other than the abrasions, everything else is normal. It's just that the child should be growing recently, so he should eat more calcium tablets and vitamins at home. As the doctor spoke, he smiled at little Aju. When little Aju heard the words grow up, she immediately perked up. Her little face was very serious as she nodded. Baijun smiled and was about to carry the child, but the child pulled his wrist and pulled him in front of the attending physician. Doctor, my little brother's hand is injured. Can you help him take a look? Vice Commander Zhang heaved a sigh of relief. In fact, compared to Mrs. Abrasion's, the injury on young master's left hand should be more serious. That area was already a little swollen, and after being soaked in sweat, it must be more painful now. He had just mentioned to young master that he should take a look at his own hand first so that he could carry Miss for a checkup. But the young master only glanced at him and didn't say anything. It seemed that he didn't want to let go of the young miss at all. Deputy Zhang was worried that if this continued, the young master's hand might become infected. If it was the young miss who suggested it, the young master would definitely do it. As expected. As soon as little Aju finished speaking, Baizhuan followed her instructions and sat there. Little Aju's small body lay on Baizhuan's long legs. She raised her small face and asked the attending physician very seriously, "Doctor, is my little brother's hand okay? He still had to do his homework and play basketball. He had to get better soon. It's a little inflamed, but it's not a big problem. We need to disinfect it with alcohol first." As the doctor spoke, he wrote the prescription list. Then he opened the medical iodine beside him, dipped a cotton ball in it and pressed Baizhuan's hand. Baizhuan immediately frowned. Little Aju stood up straight and looked at the doctor. It was as if he had done something to make her little brother feel pain. The doctor smiled. "Good girl, this is alcohol. It's normal for your little brother to feel pain." "I'm sorry." Little Aju had always been obedient. She asked with her big eyes, "Then when will little brother stop feeling pain?" "Just a few more days of medicine." The doctor handed the list to Baizhuan. Baizhuan used his other hand to rub little Aju's head. The child's concern warmed his heart. The two of them finally made up. When Baizhuan, who was wrapped in bandages, carried little Aju to the Bai family, Auntie Wang finally had the mood to cook. Without needing old Master Bai's instructions, she quickly began to prepare dinner and made a large pot of northeastern stew. The fragrance was so fragrant that even Master Li drooled. Old Master Bai looked at little Aju, who was eating beside Baizhuan, and thought that the child had finally returned to normal. If little Aju did not eat for a day, he would feel uncomfortable in his heart. Not to mention when his grandson was not around, when the little girl's ears drooped, no one could stand it. As for his grandson, he had finally returned to normal. After dinner, Shaolin and Master Li went home. Baizhuan carried little Aju upstairs and put hot water for the child. After testing the temperature of the water, he let little Aju go into the bathroom to take a bath. During this time, Baizhuan went to old Master Bai's study. Originally, he wanted to use the Bai family's influence to delete all the photos that had gone viral on the internet. After all, just the matter of Qinggong alone could attract the attention of some media outlets. In addition to the matter of his live broadcast, he did not want little Aju to have some unnecessary worries in her future life. What Baizhuan did not expect was that when he went online again, the photos that had caused the popularity had long disappeared. Could it be that someone had deleted the photos before him? Baizhuan frowned slightly. But in China, who else had the ability to do so? It was also night. At the entrance of the old alley in the capital, in an unassuming auto repair shop, there were no less than 8 LCD computers running at the same time. Each computer was running very fast. The barcodes that were running at high speed on them were not something that ordinary people could understand at all. Those computers seemed to be broken, but for those who knew the industry, they could quickly recognize that the garbled codes were in order. Someone had set up firewalls one after another on them. Moreover, when they attacked, they specifically attacked the other party's loopholes. Even when they withdrew, they started from the loopholes in the network. Immediately after that, there was a crisp sound of a slap. After Monkey pressed the enter key, he raised his head and looked at the figure sitting opposite him. "Boss, it's done. Look for me to get your salary tomorrow." Hellion Vivian stood up. She was wearing a pure black knee guard on her left leg, which made her legs look even more slender and fair. She also had short silver-gray hair on her head, which made her look a little like a comic character. There was a unique carefreeness in her handsomeness. This was the original outfit of the legendary Queen of Arms. On the other hand, Baizhuan could not figure it out at all because even old Master Bai could not get the exact information. The only thing that could be confirmed was that this should be done by an international hacker organization. However, there was no way to find out which organization it was. The IP that the other party used was originally a virtual IP. In addition, before this matter was taken seriously, the other party had already started to delete it. This way, It was even more impossible to find the other party's specific location. Chapter 1180. The more Baizhuan listened, the deeper his frown became. Alright, don't think about it anymore. Since you helped little Aju delete these photos, you should want to protect little Aju. Old Master Bai looked at his grandson, who had been more mature than his peers since he was young. He thought for a moment, opened the drawer and took out a form. This is this year's enlistment information. The youngest is only 16 years old. You know that whether it's the Tang family or our Bai family, when the children reach the age, one of them must join the army. You told me before that you want to be a soldier. It's time to tell you this so that you can be mentally prepared. Baizhuan took the thing and said in a very calm voice, I'm still in junior high school. Isn't it a little too early to be prepared? Old Master Bai sighed and looked at him meaningfully. Grandfather wants you to be prepared to leave little Aju for at least 3 years. Hearing this, Baizhuan suddenly froze. Looking at his grandson's reaction, Old Master Bai shook his head and continued, when you graduate from high school, you can't bring little Aju to the military camp. Think about it carefully. If you say that you give up now, I will help you return this application. As he spoke, Old Master Bai stood up. In fact, from a selfish point of view, he did not want to send his grandson to that army. Should it be said that it was a coincidence? If it wasn't for that live broadcast, Baizhuan might not have been chosen by the most secretive army in China. Once he was chosen, no one could change it. That was the army that any soldier wanted to go to. As a leader, he was very happy that his grandson had been chosen. However, as an old man, he knew very well what kind of mission that army carried out. Other than danger, there was still danger. Now he handed this choice to Baizhuan. If his grandson did not want to go, even if he did not want his old face and military rank, he had to think of a way. However, what Old Master Bai did not expect was that the voice behind him was actually a sentence. Leave this application here. I will fill it in when I graduate from high school. I will do what I promised father no matter what. Of course, Old Master Bai knew why Baizhuan said such words. Before the child's parents passed away, his son, who had made him proud all his life, always said to little Baizhuan, Son, promise me one thing. The Bai family should be in the military camp since they were born. You should be the same. When you grow up, you must join the army. Father protects the country and you protect the family. Do you understand? All right. At that time, little Baizhuan was much more cheerful than he was now. His voice was also very clear. He held his father's military cap and bumped fists with his father like a little man. It was as if he was fulfilling the promise he made back then. While others were planning which high school or university they would go to in the future, Baizhuan had already decided that he would join the army in the future. If Aju had not appeared, he might have gone when he was 16 years old. But now he had to watch the child grow up a little before he could leave with peace of mind. Baizhuan came out of the study and looked at the bedroom that was one door away from him. He first steadied the emotions in his eyes before pushing the door open and walking in. As soon as he opened the door, he saw that Aju had already put on a dark yellow tiger pajamas. She was doing a little somersault on the bed with her tail up. This was an entertainment activity that children often did when they were waiting for Baizhuan to arrive on time. Mingming's little face was always exposed outside. There was even a strand of hair on the top of her head. She looked very cute. Baizhuan walked over and pulled the little girl up. He tidied her hair. Does your arm still hurt? It doesn't hurt anymore. Little Aju shook her little head and sat in Baizhuan's arms. Baizhuan smiled. Then do you want to listen to a story? If I say that I want to listen to a story, will you find it troublesome? Little Aju asked seriously. Baizhuan lowered his eyes and kissed her little head. No, I will be happy. Little Aju was happy. Her soft little hand poked at the book and she said very seriously, I told you until here last time. Continue telling me. Aju will try not to sleep this time. I will wait for you to sleep first, then I will sleep. Baizhuan was amused by her appearance. He reached out and hugged the little body in his arms. He read the English in the book in a pleasant voice, which was also interspersed with Chinese. It was very slow and very low, and anyone could hear the gentleness in it. The gentle light at the head of the bed shone on the side of the youth's face. Baizhuan read the book in front of the little girl without saying anything. It was not until little Aju could not help but lean her little head on his shoulder that Baizhuan stopped with a faint smile. Just as he turned off the wall lamp, he heard little Aju say in a daze, "Little brother, don't be angry with me. I will be obedient in the future. If you don't like me using Weibo, I will use it. Oh, when I grow up and become the abbot of the temple, I will give you half of the incense money. No more than that. I won't give it to others even if they ask me. Also, today's pancakes are really delicious. I thought that when I see you again now, it will definitely be a long, long time. When you come to look for me in the future, I will be so happy, very, very happy." The child's vocabulary had not reached a certain level, so she could only rely on the strengthened tone at the end to express her thoughts. After saying that, the little girl started to snore in his arms, not giving Master Bai any time to react. Bai Jun smiled and reached out to push the child's short hair away. There was a thin layer of sweat on it. It seemed that today was really tiring for the child. Bai Jun finally understood why he had been troubled by everything for the past 2 days. In fact, the more he forced himself to sleep, the clearer his mind became. It was all because there was one less person in his arms. He did not know when it started, but it had become a habit. Perhaps his grandfather was right. He had to start making preparations. As he thought about it, he lowered his head and kissed Aju's little head again. Then he closed his eyes. His arm never left the little pillow in his arms. Sleeping had finally become something that could relax him. However, as he slept, for some reason, the burning wound that was originally a little painful actually felt a trace of comfortable coolness. This made Bai Jun open his eyes in confusion. He saw that the little girl was rubbing her big eyes with her claws. She was sitting on the edge of the bed, pouting her small body and blowing cold air on his left hand. When Bai Jun saw this scene, his heart was so warm that it was unbelievable. He reached out and hugged little Aju tightly in his arms. "Be good, it doesn't hurt. Aju, sleep well." "I saw little brother move," little Aju said with her eyes wide open. "So little brother, don't force yourself. If it hurts, tell me." Willy Buddha said that it won't hurt after I blow on it. Bai Jun did not say anything. Instead, he hugged the little girl in his arms even tighter. He thought that how could some incense money be enough? What he wanted was her. Chapter 1181. 6 years later, in the capital of the north. As the imperial capital of Huaxiao, its culture and heritage were changing with the progress of the world. The fried cat ears of the old Beijing city and the candies that the children loved to eat when they were young had been replaced by other snacks. There was only one thing that had never changed, and that was the haze after winter in the north. Some people called the imperial capital the Fog City, and this name was not false at all. Evening was the busiest time in the imperial capital. Before the sky turned dark, the lights had already begun to light up. Large pieces of snowflakes fell from the top of their heads. 3 days of snow had already decorated the entire imperial capital exceptionally beautifully. It was probably because the winter vacation was coming, so high school students in school uniforms could be seen everywhere. They took the subway and bus in high spirits. Of course, there would also be parents who would drive to pick them up. However, before the winter vacation, the students had to experience one thing, and that was the most inhumane exam. Therefore, at this time, the second floor of Starbucks would be filled with students doing all kinds of exercises and tutoring. The adults could not help but shake their heads. Children nowadays are really precocious. How would we know to do homework in a coffee shop back then? Times have changed. Times had indeed changed because there was a very cruel thing that parents would never know, and that was that their children might not come to Starbucks to do homework, but to, "What do you want to eat for lunch? Is Burger King okay? Let's watch a movie after watching it. I want to see what new movies there are." The young man who said this looked very ruffian. When the corners of his mouth curled up, he had a mischievous aura that fascinated girls. However, the person next to him reached out and pushed the glasses on his face. He was elegant and noble. "Hailu, you forgot that you have to go back early today. Master Bai has a meal with him." Li Hailu had now grown into a heartthrob. He was wearing a leather jacket which was very punk style. He patted his forehead. "How could I forget about this?" As he said this, he put down his phone and smiled at the girl sitting next to him. "It seems that we can only make an appointment another day. You can go shopping by yourself later." The girl was somewhat disappointed, but the beautiful school beauty of number 1 high school said, "Is Master Bai the Bai Jun from your school? Since it's going to be a meal anyway, why don't we call him over to join us?" Li Hailu tilted his head and held the phone in his hand. He smiled. Beauty Queen Gu, it seems that you're quite interested in our master Bai. Gu Rou smiled gently and lowered her head to take a sip of coffee. She did not deny it. Seeing that, Li Hailu and Xiao Lin looked at each other. The latter slowly closed the book and smiled. I advise you not to be too interested in Lord Bai. Because of his sister? Gu Rou was understanding. I have a sister too. Maybe when we meet we can talk about how to make my sister happy. Li Hailu burst out laughing. If Beauty Gu wants to discuss with Bai Jun how to raise a child, then forget it. Master Bai only has 3 rules for raising a child, and that is, pampering, pampering and pampering. Hearing this, Gu Rou was stunned. Li Hailu had already put his backpack on his back. He leaned over to instruct his little girlfriend and gestured for her to make another call. The two of them talked as they walked down the stairs, and they could still hear the sound of their conversation. Where is Lord Bai now? He should be at the martial arts dojo waiting to pick up a Jew. Then let's go home first. When I came out, I told my father that I was here to study. You have to go back with me and put on an act. Xiao Lin was speechless. The snow outside was getting heavier and heavier. Usually, at this time, the people sitting in the university's external self-study room reading books were not the university students of the school, but some people who were going to take the postgraduate entrance exam. The rows of seats were filled with people. On the blackboard in front of the self-study room, there would be messages such as selling postgraduate entrance exam materials, delivery, and so on. Among this group of postgraduate entrance exam students who were writing at a high speed, there was a very incompatible figure sitting there. Compared to the urgency of the postgraduate entrance exam students, his writing speed seemed to be very slow. His slender and fair fingers seemed to carry a kind of innate nobility. In front of him were college entrance exam questions from previous years. His ears were plugged with a pure white headphone cord, and light French music was playing from it. He did not seem to be in a hurry to do the questions. Instead, he looked at the watch chain on his wrist. When it was almost time, the young man stood up and put the test paper in its original position. He took his wallet and phone and walked out. His tall and straight back was like a green pine in green cypress. People could not help but want to take a look at him again and again. Even though the people sitting in the self-study room were preparing for the postgraduate entrance exam, some girls could not help but move their gazes because of the young man's departure. Of course, there were also some girls who specially came to see him. When the young man walked through the corridor, all of them held hands. That kind of surprised expression was no less than seeing a popular idol. The young man seemed to have long been used to such gazes. He carried his shoulder bag diagonally and wore a pure white down jacket with an unknown name on his upper body. The jacket had a vertical collar, and when it was straightened, it could directly cover half of his face. But even so, one could see how beautiful and deep his eyes were. The young man took a few steps and arrived at a training hall. From afar, one could hear the sound of laughter. In the past, someone had asked the young man why he came to a university self-study room to do test papers. The young man's tone was very light and he only said 3 words, because it's close. It was close to the training hall, so it was convenient for him to pick people up and go home. The snow was still falling. The diamond-shaped snowflakes fell on the top of the young man's black hair, but it did not make him look embarrassed. Instead, it had an indescribable beauty. Black and white was the ultimate contrast. The young man leaned against the wall at the side, his long legs casually crossed. When he looked at the martial arts hall, there was a smile in his eyes as if the ice had just melted. There was a kind of person who could amaze time. Let the people next to him feel it in an instant. The young man was such a person. Okay, does anyone want to challenge me? As the sandbag fell, the voice of the coach sounded in the martial arts hall. From the young man's point of view, he could see many teenagers looking at each other hesitantly. Only one person, who was shorter than the other children, blinked her big bright eyes, and raised her hand particularly high. The coach who asked the question looked around, but no one looked at her. Very good, no one wants to challenge me. Then today's class will end here. Goodbye. The coach said as he quickly turned his head. What a joke, he did not want to lose face in front of so many students. He really did not want to recall the time when a certain child beat him down as soon as he entered the training hall. Chapter 1182. Seeing this, the girl who raised her hand tilted her head and scratched her little head again. She used all her strength to pull back the coach who was about to leave and said seriously, "Coach, I can challenge you." But, what's that? The taekwondo coach anxiously glanced at the clock hanging in the hall. It's already so late. Aju, look, I still have to pick up the child. Your brother should also come to pick you up after class. Let's talk about the challenge another day. Another day. As soon as he finished speaking, the coach ran out of the martial arts hall as if he was running for his life. The student was more powerful than the teacher. If this matter were to spread, he would not be able to be a coach anymore. The main reason was that he had let down the trophies he had won in the competition. He, a burly man who weighed more than 160 pounds, actually could not beat a cute girl. How shameful. This was a disgrace no matter where he went. Aju looked at the coach who was wiping the corners of his eyes as if his heart was aching. She kept feeling that there was something wrong with the coach. However, Woolly Buddha had also said that white lies were allowed to exist in this world. She would just take it that the coach was going to pick up the child. Anyway, the little brother would definitely have arrived. Thinking of this, Aju packed her things faster. She bent down and tied her belt properly. She took the cup that Bai Jun had bought for her and walked out of the martial arts hall. Even though they had seen her often these days, the parents waiting outside found it difficult to look away when they saw her. They had really never seen such a beautiful girl before. Her hair looked smooth and long like black silk, naturally scattered on both sides of her face. Aju did not wear any special clothes. It was the simplest taekwondo training suit. It had a white background, a red road sign, and a black belt tied around her waist. But even so, it could not hide the exquisiteness of her small face. Other than her skin being very white, her eyes were also very clear like fine black gems. They were round and very cute. In addition to the little white cat on her head, she always gave people the feeling that she had walked out of a comic. The corner of the evening light shone on the side of her face. It was so clean that one could see the fine hair. He was different from the others. Aju did not need to cut her hair at all to be able to control the entertainment of taekwondo. What's more, the coach had not dared to let her fight ever since she entered the school. However, Aju herself was still very interested in beating people up, so she listened very seriously in class every day. 6 years was enough for a child to grow into a beautiful young lady. It was probably because Aju's food therapy over the years had taken effect. She was actually taller than her peers. But even so, the top of her head could only reach above Bai Jun's chest. Aju was still looking for someone with the white cat on her head. When she saw the young man leaning against the wall, she ran over without thinking. Bai Jun reached out and hugged her. His actions were very natural, as if everything had long become a habit. "Are you hungry?" Aju nodded and touched her small belly. "I've been hungry for a long time. Otherwise I wouldn't have let the coach go." Bai Jun took the cup from her hand and held her hand with his other hand. Even the corners of his mouth were smiling. "Then shall we take a taxi back today? Auntie Wang made your favorite dumplings." "Okay." Aju was always obedient. When the two of them stood together, for some reason people could not take their eyes off them. Bai Jun walked in front of Aju. From time to time he would turn his face to talk to Aju. His voice was so gentle that it was unbelievable. He was the legendary cold and aloof school hunk who was very difficult to get close to. 12:30 p.m. in the military compound. When Li Hailu saw Bai Jun walking in with Aju, he called out, "Master Bai, why are you so slow? I'm starving to death. Auntie Wang, your young master and young lady are back. Hurry up and bring the dumplings up. We also need laba vinegar and chili oil. The dumplings are only delicious when they are eaten." "Hehe." Auntie Wang replied in the kitchen, "I'll bring the food out now. There's still a pot of hot dumplings in the pot. It's filled with beans. You'll definitely like it." Although Li Hailu and the others would be 18 by the new year, they still loved to eat the dumplings at home. They were a little different from other children. It was probably because of the habits they had developed since they were young. Their concept of home was stronger than that of other children. On Saturday and Sunday, other children liked to eat outside. Bai Jun liked to eat at home, and even Li Hailu and Shaolin followed him to eat. Although they were eating dumplings, there were no less than 6 vegetarian dishes and a bowl of dumpling soup on the long table. There were cold eggplant paste, bamboo shreds in red oil, and hot and sour fern root powder on the table. Li Hailu was right. Eating dumplings still needed to be dipped in the authentic laba vinegar and then added in the chili oil. When it was put in the mouth, it could be said to be extremely delicious. Of course, this was the way the Northerners ate. With such a mixture of heavy flavors, all the flavors in the world were complete. The three young men also ate a lot. The main reason was that Aju ate together with the food. No matter how old the children were, when they ate, their cheeks would bulge like little hamsters eating. Baijun sat next to Aju. Usually he would eat one dumpling by himself. When he picked up the second one, he would blow on it and put it on Aju's plate. If Li Hailu was not smart in the past, ever since he had had countless girlfriends, he could more or less see the trick. He touched Shaolin with his hand and said very softly, "To be honest, do you think Master Bai dotes on Aju too much? How old is Aju? She's already 12 years old. When I touched Master Bai's chopsticks when I was 12 years old, he would directly kick me. Why is it that when it comes to Aju, all the rules are invalid? The main thing is that Aju doesn't need him to feed her anymore, right? What is Master Bai thinking? Is he planning to feed Aju for the rest of her life?" Hailu. Shaolin started to pick up the dumplings in his bowl when he was not paying attention. You can see that. It's not simple. As expected, people who have been in love are different. When Li Hailu heard this, he straightened his back. "What did I say? I asked you to pick up girls with me before, but you didn't? Now you're jealous of me?" "Yes, I'm jealous. Not only is your IQ negative, but your EQ is also not online." Shaolin ate the last dumpling. "You really should have a few more relationships to accumulate experience. Otherwise, how can you marry your fiancé?" Li Hailu was stunned for a long time before he realized that Shaolin was mocking him again. When he looked at the empty plate in front of him, he immediately took action. "You villain, return my dumplings to me. I can swallow them. Are you sure you can still eat them?" Shaolin. The two of them fought every day. Aju was already used to it. Biting the large plate of dumplings that Baijun had reserved for her, she felt more and more that her little brother was wise. To snatch food from these two big eaters, one had to strike first to gain the upper hand. Chapter 1183. After dinner, it was time to take a walk. The temperature outside was so low that it was a little cold. Aju didn't like to wear gloves. She always said that wearing gloves was like wearing two kitten claws. Baijun also let her be. However, every time he went out, he had to hold Aju's right hand and stuff it into his coat pocket. He was afraid that the child would be cold. Li Hailu actually didn't like to walk very much. He habitually used his elbow to touch Shaolin. Look, the way Master Bai dotes on the child. That school belle goose still wants to discuss with him what kind of sister she should have. How many people can raise a child like Master Bai? Once the new year arrives, little Aju will really be 12 years old. If Master Bai continues like this, how will little Aju, who has entered puberty, find a boyfriend? Think about it, when we were 12 years old, didn't we start to have fantasies about girls? Little Aju is the same. Master Bai sends her to class every day and picks her up after class. If little Aju has a good impression of any boy, she will be scared away by our Master Bai, the great Buddha. Hailu. Shaolin raised his eyes and glanced at him. "I originally thought that after you fell in love, your brain would be enlightened. It seems that even falling in love can't save your low EQ. Can't you talk properly? Damn it, you're attacking me again." Shaolin couldn't be bothered to look at him again. However, Hailu was probably right about one thing. Baijun wanted to feed Aju for the rest of her life. Speaking of hard work, Baijun at this age must have had a very hard time. Shaolin still remembered the last time they sat on the sofa and watched movies and smoked. Baijun was born to be a playboy. But that piece was clearly given to Baijun by Li Hailu. Baijun didn't even look at it. He just sat lazily on the chair and smoked slowly. No one knew what he was thinking. At that time he was caught off guard. Aju pushed the door open and walked in. Before she could see what was on the screen clearly, Baijun took a quick step and closed the door. It was rare for him to be flustered. "Little brother, what are you watching?" "Nothing. It's a ghost movie that just came out this year." "Ghost movie? I like watching ghost movies the most." "It's not good. It's boring. I'll take you to the cinema this weekend. Let's go downstairs and eat something first. There's yogurt ice cream in the fridge at the seaside restaurant." All right. Ever since that time, Baijun had never allowed them to watch porn again. He even said that if they wanted to watch it in the future, they could go out and get a room to watch it. Don't bring it to the courtyard. Even smoking, Baijun did not seem to want Aju to see him. Speaking of which, the young master of the aristocratic family who wanted to cooperate with Baijun had even brought them to an entertainment venue. In fact, it was not strange for them to go to those places at their age. It was just that Baijun did not seem to like it. His entire body was suffused with an aura that prevented strangers from entering. At that time he knew that he could not compare to Baijun. He also liked Ju very much. She really liked it. However, he had not cultivated to Baijun's level. He was still full of curiosity about this world. He could not guarantee that before Ju grew up he would not do anything to let Ju down. After all, a person's patience was limited, especially at this age. Speaking of which, he admired Baijun very much. How did he manage to be so indifferent in front of the girl he liked? Shaolin's eyes curved into a smile. Perhaps it was not that he was indifferent, but it was already very difficult for him to endure. It was night. At 9:30 p.m., it was time for Ju to sleep again. The pajamas on her body did not change with her age. It was still a kitten's outfit, but it was a few sizes bigger than before. Moreover, Ju's legs were very long. When she wore pants, her ankles would always be exposed. However, this did not affect her beauty. In winter, wearing this kind of soft pajamas was the most comfortable to sleep in. However, recently there was something that made Ju feel a little troubled. She did not know why, but in the middle of the night Baijun would always get up to take a shower. The shower was cold. After taking a shower he would carry the quilt to the next room to sleep. Could it be that Baijun had not been sleeping well recently? Ju raised her head and looked at Baijun, who had walked out of the bathroom. After Baijun's hair was washed with water, it would become especially black, and his face would also become much gentler. The saying that a youth's face was like jade was probably referring to this kind of person. Baijun wiped his hair and sat on the side of the bed. Ju originally wanted to take the towel in his hand and wipe it for him. She did not expect that as soon as she approached, Baijun's entire back stiffened. I suddenly remembered that I still have an English test paper that I haven't done. Baijun turned his face and looked at her with a faint smile. His hand that was holding the towel was a little tight. I'm going to the study. Ju looked at the empty seat beside her and tilted her head in confusion. Didn't he say that he had finished his homework? Moreover, when did Baijun become so fond of learning? He clearly did not need to write a test paper to get full marks. Ju did not understand. She lay on the bed and thought in a daze. Was it her imagination? She felt that Baijun had not even hugged her much recently. If Baijun was still in this state tomorrow, then she would hug him to sleep. Yes, it was the same if she hugged him. Ju, who was gradually falling asleep, did not know that in the study room that was separated by a wall, Baijun was not writing a test paper at all. Instead, he frowned and lit a cigarette. He just sat on the cold wooden chair as if he was waiting for the unusual heat in his body to subside. He reached out and tugged at his collar. It was just such an ordinary action, but when he did it, there was an additional fatal sexiness. Boys at this age could not control themselves under most circumstances. The other side of innocence was that they wanted to get it. Baijun blew out a smoke ring. His handsome face already had a well-defined and unruly look. Shaolin was right. A person like him should have been a master who lived with thousands of women, but because of one person he suppressed his innate nature. However, no one knew when this nature would be exposed. The night gradually cooled down. Baijun did not know how long he sat there, but that maddening sweetness finally faded from the tip of his nose. It seemed that he could no longer treat her as a child. Baijun supported his forehead with one hand. His black hair fell down, blocking his deep eyes. He knew very well that when one reached a certain age they should sleep in separate beds. This was not good for him and Ju, especially since Ju had already started to develop. He knew the changes in her body better than anyone else, but he could not bear to sleep in separate beds. He was truly the one who brought this upon himself. Chapter 1184. Baijun reached out and put out the half of the cigarette in the ashtray. When the smell of smoke on his body was almost gone, he returned to the bedroom. Ju was already asleep. Her fair and slender ankles were outside the blanket. There was also a pair of very beautiful feet. Even her toes were jeweled and made people like her. This was probably the unique cleanliness and tenderness of the aged cardamom. Of course, this also had something to do with the way Baijun raised the child. As long as Bai Jun was around, he would never let Aju's hands be stained with smoke. Feeding her was secondary. Even washing her hands, Bai Jun had to do it himself. That was why Aju had such tender and pure white skin. No matter who saw her, they would feel that the child was unbelievably clean. This was also the effect that Bai Jun wanted. His Aju, of course, had to be different from everyone in the world. The world was too dirty and his Aju was too clean. If possible, he really wanted to let the child stay in the courtyard all the time so that the things outside would not affect her. But he knew very well that Aju would not like that kind of lifestyle. Thinking of this, Bai Jun walked over and gently squatted down. He knelt on one knee. His gaze was gentle, as if he was not in control. His thin lips landed on that slightly open mouth. It was just a light touch. Bai Jun's entire body froze. He quickly bounced back and stood there just like that. After an unknown amount of time, he made sure that the person on the bed did not show any signs of waking up. Only then did Bai Jun sit by the bed. His fingers held Aju's ankle and gently covered her with the blanket. When he lowered his head, his eyes were as deep as the sea. In the morning, the sun set. The environment in the courtyard had always been the best in the city. It was just that after winter, the sound of birds was rarely heard. On the other hand, the snow was heavy, and a layer of snow had accumulated outside the window. Aju, who had always liked to sleep early and wake up early, rubbed her eyes with her hand. Her long black hair was scattered on the white pillow towel. The light passed through the treetops and shone on her smooth calves, making her look like an angel who had woken up from her sleep. Oh, the angel touched the side of her body. She originally wanted to nestle into someone's embrace. But when he stretched out his hand, he found that it was empty. This made Aju sober up a lot in an instant. She blinked her big eyes twice, then hugged the little white cat and sat up cross-legged. Did little brother go to another place to sleep yesterday? Why was that? Aju, who could not figure it out, was inevitably a little distracted during self-study. Because she had skipped a grade, Aju was now a junior high school student. Speaking of which, she had to mention her desk mate. Aju's desk mate's surname was Gu Mingqing. He was a very cool and beautiful young man. He was a transfer student. His hair was dyed dark brown and he wore a black earring on his ear. He looked like a vampire. He seemed to be very powerful in school. It was said that as soon as he transferred, he became the boss of the junior high school. Many girls liked to stuff love letters in his desk. It could be said that in the past month, because of his appearance, Bai Jun's voice had begun to decrease. Guqing did not like to talk either. However, unlike Bai Jun, he was a person who liked to play very much. Even if it was a school uniform, he could still give off a ruffian feeling. There was a smell of cigarettes all over his body that could not be dispersed at any time. In fact, he had only been Aju's desk mate for a few days. The main reason was that the girls wanted nothing more than to get closer to him, while the boys obviously did not dare to provoke him for fear that they would be beaten up. Guqing laughed. You're really well protected by your brother. Why are you so different from your brother? Bai Jun, don't be fooled by his gentle appearance. He's a good student in front of the teacher. In fact, he might be more playful than anyone else. Last time I even saw him at a nightclub. Oh right, you don't know what a nightclub is. Chapter 1185. Although Aju's state of mind was smaller than her peers, it did not mean that she did not know anything. She had seen what nightclubs were like on television. She even knew that her little brother smoked. The last time she ran to the study, she saw Master Li and the others each holding a cigarette in their mouths. It was just that her little brother did not want her to know every time, and he did not allow anyone to come to see her with the smell of cigarettes on them. Aju's mind was thinking about falling in love. Guqing was still talking, his voice lazy. But even if your brother is in love, he won't let you know, right? After all, this kind of thing has to be hidden from the family. This made sense. Every time little gangster Li fell in love, he did it secretly. That's why, little bean, you have to give your brother some space, understand? At the end of Guqing's sentence, the bell rang. There was a 3-minute break between classes. A girl stood outside the classroom wanting to give Guqing snacks. Guqing looked at Aju, who was still deep in thought in the classroom. He, who had never been interested in snacks, actually took the snacks. Of course, the girl was happy. She pulled her friend away. She did not see that Guqing put all the snacks in front of Aju. Help me get rid of them. Don't you like to eat them? Aju did like to eat them. Because of this, Bai Jun would always stuff a lot of snacks in her small school bag. They were all biscuits, small cakes and so on. He was afraid that she would be hungry. Gu Qing saw that this child would take out from time to time to eat after class, so he simply made these snacks. After all, it was quite interesting to watch her eat. Unexpectedly, little Aju shook her head and patted her school bag. Thank you. There are still a lot of things that little brother prepared for me. You can eat these snacks yourself. This was the first time Gu Qing had been rejected. He narrowed his eyes, but he did not get angry. He just waved his hand and threw the snacks into the trash can. What are you doing? Aju was completely awake. Gu Qing did not care. It was originally for you. Since you don't want to eat it, it's useless to keep it. Aju paused and said, don't throw it away next time. Gu Qing smiled and said, I'll stuff it in your school bag. Aju did not refuse. She only took out 2 bags of snacks that Bai Jun had prepared for her and placed them in Gu Qing's palm. Gu Qing paused and then smiled. He opened the package and ate it. However, in the eyes of others, especially boys, he was still a very scary person. It was because he really liked to fight and always had a group of people around him. Moreover, no one knew when or what would provoke him. Gu Qing was very domineering, handsome and good at fighting. He was almost in line with the conditions that all girls of that age were attracted to. Her classmate also came out. He treated Aju differently. However, it felt like he was playing with Aju. Although Gu Qing was only in the 3rd year of junior high school, he had been in love twice since he came to number 1 middle school. He had changed 2 girlfriends in a month. Compared to Li Hailu, he was even better. However, he was different from Li Hailu's flirtatiousness. For him, girlfriends had always been a matter of being together if they were happy and breaking up with them if they were unhappy. His personality was really cold and his family was a big conglomerate. Dating was just a game for him. The good thing was that he would tell the girls who confessed to him in advance that he was not a person who valued relationships. If they were willing, they would talk about it. If they were not, then forget it. Even so, there were still many girls who threw themselves at him like moths to a flame. It was rare to see him treat Aju like this. But it was obvious that Aju had something on her mind today. The specific thing on her mind was that when she was doing math homework with old me in her mouth, she would always think of what Gu Qing had told her. If her little brother was in a relationship, would he really hide it from her? Aju paused for a moment. She held the side of her face with one hand and looked at the snow outside the window. However, her little brother had been very strange recently. It was too strange. He would always go to the study at night. It was as if there was something that he did not want her to know. Thinking of this, Aju ate old me with crunching sounds. She reached out and touched her small stomach, feeling that something was strange. She looked up at the time on the clock on the wall. It would be her little brother's birthday in 3 days. She planned to skip class this afternoon and run out to buy a gift for her little brother. This was because every year her little brother would buy her a lot of things. Not to mention the clothes, those beautiful dolls and all kinds of Buddhist heart sutras. The latter were more expensive and required a lot of incense money. Aju always felt that if she continued to be raised by her little brother like this, even if she became a host in the future, she might not be able to compare to the jade Buddha statues that her little brother had given her. Especially the bracelet on her wrist. Aju lowered her head and shook her left hand. Where did you buy this bracelet? Gu Qing was still lying on the table. When he took a closer look at the Buddha's head, even as a young master of a consortium, he was shocked. This is a good thing. My father has one. It's made of pure jade. But he only has one Buddha's head. You have 18. How expensive is it? Aju lowered her eyes and took another bite of old me. Little brother bought it for me. Bai Juan. Gu Qing shook his head decisively. Impossible. Even if he is the only grandson of the Bai family, he can't have so much pocket money. Besides, how could he bear to spend it? This is pure jade. However, Gu Qing did not know. To Master Bai, it was just money spent on Aju. He would never feel reluctant to spend it. Aju had a Buddhist fate. When she entered the world, she was afraid of chaos. When Bai Juan saw this white jade Buddha statue, he made up his mind to buy it for Aju. He wanted Aju to be safe for the rest of her life. Gu Qing was right. No matter how powerful the Bai family was, Bai Juan was just an underage child. Old Master Bai would not give him so much money to buy a bracelet. But at the same time, Gu Qing did not know. Why did Bai Juan go to the nightclub that day? He was there to discuss a project. The project was done by him and Shaolin together. The people he came into contact with were all people in society. How could he not drink? However, just as Shaolin said, Master Bai just sat there with a smile on his face, but he did not touch anything. If it was not for buying this Buddhist bracelet for a Jew, Bai Jun probably would not even sit down. However, Gu Qing still underestimated the power of the Bai family. Bai Jun was the third generation of the red seedlings. Any random item in his house was authentic. Moreover, Bai Jun's grandfather only had one grandson, Bai Jun. It was not a problem for him to be in business, politics, or the military. However, Master Bai had also said that buying things for his Jew must be the money he earned personally. Chapter 1186. A Jew did not know how to make money, but she already had a lot of money in her savings jar. This time, while Bai Jun was not paying attention, she stuffed all of it into the pocket of her school bag so that she could go and buy a gift for her little brother. But what should she buy? For the first time, a Jew who did not know what worry was, felt that her brain was not enough. In the past, she had never worried about this matter. Because every time this happened, her little brother would always kiss her on the top of her head and say that as long as she was by his side, it would be the best gift. But this year was different. Her little brother would be 18 after the new year. He would be an adult at 18. He had to give him a gift. But what should she give him? She entered another cycle. That's right. Since her little brother smoked, she would give him a lighter. In that case, the next time her little brother smoked, he would not have to always freeze outside with Master Li and the others in order to disperse the smell of the smoke. After a Jew made up her mind, she sat up straight. This was the first time the homeroom teacher had encountered a child taking a leave of absence. Tell me, this child was too obedient. When she looked at you with a pair of big eyes that did not understand the world, your heart would really soften. Moreover, a Jew was definitely an honest girl. When the teacher asked her why she was going out early, she said with a serious face, to buy a birthday present for little brother. She really did not lie at all. In addition, the relationship between the Bai siblings was well known in the school. In the afternoon, there was also a sports and music class. In order to prevent a Jew from accidentally breaking any sports equipment during the sports class, the homeroom teacher generously wrote her a leave of absence. He also specially reminded her not to come back before the sports class ended. To be honest, every Wednesday was the most common day for the sports teacher. Because on this day he had to face a female student who could casually walk with a shot put. Last time when he let a Jew fly the shot put, she threw it too far and smashed the window of the principal's office. The principal held him and scolded him for a long time. He really didn't want to mention it again. Fortunately, a Jew was not here today. The sports teacher was so touched that he was about to cry. After all, a Jew had told him very seriously that she liked sports class the most. Using such a method to like, the sports teacher really could not be happy. A Jew herself was very happy. She carried the little white cat in her arms and left the school. This seemed to be the first time she went shopping alone after that year. There were shopping malls near the school, so she didn't have to go far. However, what a Jew did not expect was that she had just taken a few steps when someone grabbed her wrist. I didn't expect you to skip class. It was Gu Qing. At first he thought that he had seen wrongly. Why would that little bean come to the mall at this time? He ignored the girl behind him and followed her. Now that he was sure that it was a Jew, he turned around and said to the person, "You go back first. I'll accompany her." The girl looked at a Jew angrily, but she didn't dare to say anything because there was almost no one in number 1 high school who didn't know that Bai Jun doted on his sister. Whoever went against his sister, he would go against them. Therefore, the girl was smart and knew how to control her temper. Then let's have dinner together another day. After saying this, she even smiled at a Jew, even though it was not sincere. This was why Gu Qing liked girls who were older than him. At least they knew when to advance and when to retreat. What made him curious was why the little bean would appear here. What are you doing in the mall? Aren't you afraid that the teacher will tell your brother that you're skipping class? I applied for leave, a Jew said as she looked to her side. No one knew what she was looking for with her beautiful eyes. Gu Qing raised his eyebrows. He felt that it was really strange for the little bean to not go shopping. Found it, a Jew said softly and walked towards a place that specialized in buying lighters. Such a Zippo store could only be found in large shopping malls. The shell of the lighters was basically made of metal and it felt especially good to hold. Aju hugged the little white cat and looked at the lighters hanging on the wall with bright eyes. Guqing did not expect her to come to see this. Let's go, little bean. This is not something you can play with. Aju did not leave. Guqing once again saw what true strength was. He could not pull a girl. Hello, please give me that pure silver lighter. Aju let Guqing pull her like that. She looked at the salesperson without moving at all and smiled. And the pure black one on the right. The salesperson looked at her face. Little beauty, you are still young. This brother is right. You are not suitable to play with this. I don't play with it. I want to buy it for my little brother, Aju said seriously. These two colors are the best match for him, so it was a gift. There was nothing to be surprised about. After all, there were students who came to buy lighters for their father. With this thought in mind, the salesperson took down the two lighters. She was still wearing plush gloves on her hands, as if she was afraid of damaging the body of the lighter. Her movements were very professional. Little beauty, you have good taste. These two lighters are limited edition this year. We only have these two in our shop. Aju looked at the two lighters in front of her. Each of them had its own characteristics. The silver one was very clean and bright, and the black one had a perfect cutting curve. At a glance, it looked luxurious. Which one should she choose? Aju only hesitated for a second. In the next second, her eyes lit up. Wrap them up for me. Anyway, they were all quite good-looking, so she would just choose them all. After buying the lighters, she could also buy a school bag for her little brother. She had been carrying that school bag for a long time. Although the little brother was very handsome, Aju found that she had fallen in love with this feeling. Bye. Aju's state really shocked Guqing. Little bean, you're not done yet, are you? Baizhuan has so many clothes, you don't need to buy clothes for him, right? Guqing inexplicably became the leader. Aju still knew the ways of the world. Guqing, thank you very much. When I'm done buying, I'll treat you to a big bun, a vegetarian one. Guqing was speechless. What was there to show off about a vegetarian big bun? At the very least, she had to treat him to a Burger King meal. Only the little bean could treat someone to a bun. The clothes for this matter are not bad. Aju was about to pay the bill. Guqing held her hand. Come here. Look over there. Is that my cousin and your brother? Although he thought so, he did not know if it was because he was about to leave. Sometimes he would watch a Jew who was lying on his shoulder grow up day by day. He would always feel uneasy. He was 5 years older than her. In her eyes, he might just be an older brother who was meticulous to her. Just an older brother. Baizhuan held the bag in his hand. He should not be thinking so much at this time. Aju was still young. What he needed was to accompany her as she grew up. But now, Baizhuan was no longer sure what he would do if Aju did not choose him when she grew up. Or rather, during this process she had a good impression of a boy of the same age. What should he do? He kept repeating this question in his heart. Until he left the mall, he did not put much thought into business. Old Master Gu liked Baizhuan very much, and the Bai family had a good relationship with him. It was just that they were not in the capital in the past. Now that they were back, it was good for both families to interact more. Gu Rou could also see that Baizhuan did not like to accompany her, but this was nothing. When her grandfather first asked her to get in touch with the Bai family, she did not like it. However, after meeting Baizhuan, she was quite satisfied with her grandfather's arrangement. Baizhuan was probably the same. Gu Rou turned around and glanced at Baizhuan through the car window. She did not care if Baizhuan would reply to her greeting. The corners of her mouth curled up into a smile. You like him? Old Master Gu teased. Gu Rou had been abroad for a long time, so she admitted it happily. Yes. Then you have to chase after him yourself. Grandpa can't help you with this kid from the Bai family. Gu Rou was smart. When she heard Old Master Gu's words, she knew that he was willing to do this for her. In the 3rd year of high school, what ordinary families thought the most was to let the students focus on the exam. But for families like Bai Gu and Shaoli, in fact, as soon as the children entered high school, they had already been arranged. Basically, they would go abroad to study after graduation. Baizhuan was probably someone who rarely went to the army. He did not seem to have used the Bai family's power at all. Except for doing business. Baizhuan was not stupid. Since his family background was there, it would be a waste not to use it. It was just in terms of studying. When Baizhuan was in high school, a foreign university had sent an invitation letter, wanting to make an exception to accept him. Baizhuan did not go. If he went abroad, what would Aju do? Aju did not like to eat Western food. She only liked to eat steamed buns and white rice. Baizhuan was not willing to let Aju go with him to suffer, and he could not leave Aju. The child had followed him since she was young, and many things were done by Baizhuan himself. Aju was easy to raise. She would eat whatever he fed her. However, Baizhuan also realized that she could not go to very noisy places. Once she went, she would be listless unless he was with her. Baizhuan had thought about it before. He wanted to raise his Aju until she was white and chubby. He could not just leave when she was still young. Although Aju had mentioned that she had a mother, the temple had never accepted babies. Chapter 1188. Buddhists had always paid attention to karma. If a baby's parents were still alive, the temple would not accept it. Unless it was an orphan. Or perhaps it was really a Buddha. Compared to the latter, Baizhuan naturally felt that the former was the real reason. Therefore, until now, the invitation letter from the foreign university was still kept in the study by Old Master Bai. Baizhuan was destined to go to the army, but before he went to the army, the only thing he could not bear to part with was Aju. He originally thought that he had thought it through thoroughly, but he did not expect that someone would still approach Aju when he did not know. Aju's head was also stuffy now. Looking at the hamburger that Gu Qing handed over, she shook her head. "Thank you, but I don't eat meat. I only eat vegetables. I want to go back to school. Otherwise, my little brother will be anxious if he can't find me later. He's shopping with my cousin now. He probably won't be able to find time to pick you up in the afternoon." Gu Qing wiped his hands. "To be honest, if I had a sister like you, I would definitely feel guilty like Baizhuan. Therefore Aju's words are true. Don't be too clingy to your brother. He must be in a difficult position. Otherwise, how could he not tell you that he even knows my cousin? He must be afraid that if you know, it will affect him." Aju tilted her head and pursed her small mouth. In the end, she still insisted on going back to school. Gu Qing could not even catch up with her. He bumped into many people along the way. Gu Qing, who had not even finished his hamburger, was somewhat unhappy. Why was the little bean so stubborn when it came to her brother's matter? In fact, what happened today had a certain impact on Aju. When she was young, she thought that her little brother was a Buddhist disciple like her. He could not break the precepts, so he could not fall in love. Now she understood that her little brother was actually different from her. He could fall in love, even get married and have children. She had to ask if her little brother really had a girl he liked. If that was the case, she did not want to affect her little brother. But for some reason she felt very awkward in her heart. Aju's awkwardness was reflected in the snacks that Baizhuan stuffed into her school bag. She did not touch any of them. Even when the little white cat used its soft head to nudge her, she did not want to talk to the cat as usual. It was still snowing outside. Baizhuan was still waiting for Aju to finish class at the usual place. He was carrying a school bag on one shoulder and wearing a pure white down jacket, which made his eyes look even more distinct. The students who came and went were all looking at Baizhuan. "It's Senior Colonel Bai. He must be here to pick up his sister. Do you guys feel that our school hunk is getting more and more handsome by the day? He's simply a Prince Charming. Not only is he famous in number 1 high school, but the students of number 3 high school and number 2 high school have also come to visit him. There's even a campus belle from number 2 high school chasing after him. I don't know if it's true, but according to reliable sources, the two have already struck up a conversation. It's fake, right? As a siscon, senior brother doesn't have time to date, right? Other than picking up Aju, I haven't seen senior brother with anyone else. I'm afraid it's true this time. My best friend is from number 2 high school. She even saw her senior sister and the school hunk go to Starbucks together and order takeout coffee." Aju had the little white cat on her head as she listened to the discussions around her. For some reason her footsteps felt a little heavy. She tilted her head to look and realized that she had not eaten the large pile of snacks in her school bag today. When Baizhuan saw her, his eyes completely softened. He reached out and took off her school bag. Then he frowned. "Why is it so heavy?" "Yes." Aju was beautiful. She reached out and hugged her school bag. She reported honestly, "I didn't eat snacks this afternoon. Baijun paused for a moment and thought of her going out today. Aren't you hungry if you don't eat snacks in the classroom? I'm not hungry today. Aju was still very obedient. She answered whatever he asked. I went outside to eat French fries. As he spoke, he inserted the straw into the yogurt bag and handed it to her. Why did you think of going outside today? Aju thought to herself that this was bad. Little brother was going to know about her buying him a gift. If he knew about this in advance, there would be no surprise. How could she be so careless and be asked so many things by little brother? She could not help but reach out her hand to knock on her little head. Unfortunately, her left hand was already in Baijun's arms, and her other hand could only hold the yogurt. Nothing, just strolling around. Aju lowered her head and lowered her long eyelashes. He sucked on the straw one after another. She looked a little guilty. Seeing this, Baijun's heart felt as if it had been punched hard by someone. Aju's reaction was not within his expectations at all. He knew better than anyone how obedient Aju was. Usually she would say whatever was asked. But this time it was obvious that she wanted to hide it from him. Just because of that little brat in the same class as her? Baijun's Adam's apple moved with difficulty. His hand that was hanging on the other side was tightly clenched. It was clearly snowing heavily outside, but he did not feel cold at all. Instead, it was as if there was something in the center of his chest that was being burned by fire. It was very uncomfortable. It was so uncomfortable that it even made him want to crush something. But the person standing in front of him was his Aju. A long time ago, on the day Aju wanted to return to the temple, he had sworn that no matter what happened he would never lose his temper in front of Aju again. If possible, he never wanted Aju to see his dirtiest and most unscrupulous side. That way, at the very least, he could still be her little brother. Once everything was exposed, Baijun could not imagine what kind of gaze she would use to look at him. He thought that there was something right about one thing. When a person was in the dark and alone, it was nothing. After all, this world was so big. It didn't matter if you were there or not. But when someone brought you light, allowing you to hold another person in your arms every day, watching her smile at you. She was small to begin with, and sometimes she even held chopsticks to feed you eggs. You would feel that no matter what happened in the future, you would not want to go back to the darkness. As for Baijun, the only thing he did not want to let go of was the small and soft hand in his palm. Aju walked beside Baijun. She was really obedient and beautiful. This is the real princess and prince. To be honest, compared to the school belle, I prefer my little princess Aju. Really, can you lend her to me? I want a little princess too. Last time little princess Aju helped me carry 2 big leather suitcases. The boys didn't help me carry them. When little princess Aju saw it, she helped me carry them to the dormitory with ice cream in her mouth without saying anything. That look was so cute. As if she had heard someone say her name, Aju raised her small head and looked over. Her small face was very good-looking and her whole person was cute and adorable. Chapter 1189. What's wrong? Baijun asked in a low voice. Aju said seriously, someone said that they like me. Baijun was stunned for a moment before he smiled. His bright eyes and white teeth were handsome. Then he took off his scarf and wrapped it around Aju's small face. Many people like you. Grandfather and Auntie Wang, which one of them doesn't dote on you to the heavens? Auntie Wang just called and said that she made pea noodles for you. I'll fry it for you when we get back. Yes. Aju's entire face was surrounded by the red scarf, and only a pair of black and bright eyes were exposed. When she heard Baijun's words, she nodded her head heavily and immediately perked up. Seeing that Aju was no longer listless, Baijun was relieved. He held Aju's hand again. From afar he could still hear him say, "If you're cold, tell me." Therefore some people were right. Master Bai doted on Aju so much that it was a little infuriating. According to what Master Li said, Aju was almost 12 years old. She was not 2 years old, so how could she not know whether it was cold or hot? If everyone in the world raised children like Master Bai, how many mischievous children would they have to raise? Fortunately, only Aju could endure Baijun's raising method. Unfortunately, Baijun's plan to cook noodles for Aju was ruined on this day. Because the Bai family had a guest. Since it was a guest, of course he could not just eat some pea noodles. Old Master Bai asked someone to brew the best Longjing tea. The living room was also filled with fresh fruit plates and dried fruits. There were even chess pieces in the center of the chessboard. His hearty laughter could be heard from afar. It's this move. Back then, I relied on this move to win against you. Yes, I'm not as good as you. The old man sitting opposite Old Master Bai had a dragon-headed walking stick in his hand. He was dressed in a well-made suit. Although his hair was white, he was very energetic. He exuded the demeanor of a businessman from the inside out. Who else could it be but Old Master Gu? When Bai Juan walked in and saw the scene in the living room, he could not help but stop for a moment. Little brother? A Jew was walking behind him. As soon as Bai Juan stopped, the tip of the child's nose bumped into his back. She hugged her school bag and blinked her big eyes. Bai Juan quickly turned his head and rubbed her little nose for her. This should be a Jew, right? Suddenly he heard a clear laughter. When a Jew raised her head, she saw a young girl in a floral dress smiling at her. The young girl was wearing a white cashmere windbreaker. She looked very sweet, very much like those popular girl groups nowadays. She was cute and pure, and it was easy for people's eyes to light up. A Jew knew this person. When she was picking out a gift for her little brother in the mall, this person was also there. Hi Bai Juan. Gu Rou blinked mischievously. You definitely didn't expect us to meet so soon. Bai Juan smiled. There was a unique indifference in his politeness. I really didn't expect it. By the way, a Jew. Gu Rou turned around and continued to say to a Jew, there's another person who's here too. You'll definitely be very, very happy to see him. A Jew tilted her head, her face full of question marks. Hey little brother, if you stay outside and don't come in, you won't be able to see a Jew's cute appearance. Gu Rou put her hands behind her back and shouted softly towards the window. Even the smile at the corner of her mouth looked kind and gentle. Got it, Sister Rou. You're really long-winded. The lazy voice was still crisp, making a Jew feel that it was inexplicably familiar. Then there was a loud bang. A figure in a black windbreaker jumped to the window with one hand on the stone steps. His movements were very handsome. That figure was none other than a Jew's desk mate, Gu Cheng. He walked towards a Jew with a smile at the corner of his eyes. You didn't expect me to come, right, little bean? A Jew really didn't expect it. Her little head tilted again. Here, I bought it for you. Gu Cheng stretched out his other hand with a chocolate cream cake on it. A Jew liked to eat chocolate. Bai Juan only knew this. However, the feeling that the boy in front of him gave him made his heart tremble. This boy was very similar to that celebrity. Was it because of him that a Jew wanted to hide it from him? Bai Juan looked at the two people of about the same age talking there, especially since a Jew was very familiar with the boy. Bai Juan's slender fingers, which were hidden under his white coat, could not help but clench into fists. Even his deep eyes were filled with an unprecedented coldness. Gu Rou was still smiling. When she turned her head to talk to Bai Juan, she accidentally saw his clenched hand. She could not help but pause for a moment. Then she followed Bai Juan's gaze and looked over. It happened to fall on her cousin and a Jew. Gu Rou frowned. She thought that she had seen wrongly. She must have seen wrongly. How could someone as arrogant as Bai Juan show such an expression? It was as if he was jealous. However, thinking about it carefully, probably any brother who had a sister complex would not be able to see his sister being close to other boys. Thinking of this, Gu Rou laughed again. She walked to Bai Juan's ear and said, My cousin and a Jew have a good relationship, right? It just so happens that we can be even closer. What do you think? Bai Juan turned his face and his voice was a little cold. Even closer? Gu Rou had never heard him talk to her in such a voice. He was about to explain. She heard Old Master Gu laugh heartily. Brother, look at these juniors. It's so lively when they gather together. Bai Juan is still the calmest child. Even my granddaughter, who is being chased by others, is helpless in front of him. Grandfather. Gu Rou reached out and held Old Master Gu's hand. Why do you say everything in front of Grandfather Bai? As she spoke, she raised her eyes and glanced at Bai Juan. Her thin skin was already a little hot. She looked crimson. Old Master Gu was puzzled. You weren't like this when you were abroad. This is also strange. Gu Cheng, look at your sister. He's even shy. She likes me. Gu Cheng raised his eyebrows and smiled evilly. Originally they were still happy, but Bai Juan suddenly interrupted the laughter in the room. Grandfather, has a Jew's pea noodles been cooked? Old Master Gu's laughter stopped. Old Master Bai really couldn't do anything about his grandson. I'm not eating noodles today. Let's eat something else. I promised Aju to cook noodles for her. Bai Juan stood up in a very indifferent voice and held Aju's hand. Grandfather Gu, I still have to cook for my sister, so I'll go down first. Bai Juan's words and actions were very polite. But it was precisely because he was too polite that it made people feel alienated. Old Master Bai frowned and did not say anything. Just then Auntie Wang walked out with the dishes and said hesitantly, "Young master, it's almost time to eat." Chapter 1190. Let grandfather and the others eat first. Bai Juan held Aju's hand and walked into the kitchen at the side without looking back. The kitchen was semi-open and one could see what was going on inside from the dining table in the living room. Old Master Bai smiled and greeted the Gu family. Come, come, come. Let's eat first. That kid cooks noodles very quickly. Ru Xiaoqing, all of you sit. Don't keep standing. I've long wanted to try Sister Wang's cooking. Old Master Gu was the first to sit down. He was not clear about the undercurrent between the children. The two old men had not seen each other for a long time and were very happy. The white wine was filled with a plate of peanuts and a pound of beef in sauce. It was no different from when they were young. When old people got together, they liked to talk about the past. On the other side, the two old men were talking happily. On the other side, Bai Juan had already washed the cucumbers and carrots. He was lowering his head and cutting them into very uniform cubes. The reason why Master Bai could cook now was all because of Aju. One year Auntie Wang had gallstones. After the surgery she had to stay in the hospital for at least half a month to recuperate. There was no one at home to cook. Although Aju was not picky about food, there was also a canteen in the courtyard. However, in summer when a child ate greasy food outside, it would not be easy to digest. One had to know that Aju never got sick when she was in the temple. Seeing that the child's round little face had become sharp, Bai Juan was anxious. The only grandson of the Bai family who had never touched the sun, opened the internet to search and prepared to cook by himself. The first meal was cooked by the two of them. Aju loved to eat white rice. Bai Juan first checked the instructions, steamed the rice in the rice pot, opened the refrigerator and took out the dishes inside. In the beginning he wanted to make something simple. At that time Aju was still young. She would give him whatever he wanted. The child even knew how to crack eggs, but there was always something on her little face. She was so cute that people liked her. Ever since that day, every Sunday Bai Juan would cook a meal for Aju. Even after Auntie Wang was discharged from the hospital, this habit did not change. Little brother, do you need to put in eggs? I'll help you crack them. Now, Aju's height was already above the kitchen counter. However, her cute expression did not change much. Her big eyes looked at Bai Juan, who was cutting vegetables sideways, and asked very obediently. Bai Juan smiled and put the vegetables into the glass bowl. No need, but there's something that I really need Aju's help with. What is it? Aju had always liked to help her little brother. Bai Juan lowered his eyes and broke the egg into another bowl. Without raising his head he said, "Help me put on the apron." Wear an apron? This seemed to be the first time that little brother had asked her for something like this. Aju nodded solemnly. With a small face she seriously took off the apron hanging at the side and said to Bai Juan, "Little brother, turn around. Otherwise I won't be able to put it on." All right. Bai Juan was wearing disposable transparent gloves and holding a white bowl in his left hand. The white bowl was filled with egg liquid. With a smile on his face he casually raised his two arms and allowed Aju, who was much shorter than him, to put on an apron for him. He had to put on the front first before he could tie the back. Aju was very careful. Bai Juan could smell her hair when he lowered his head. Sometimes some things would never change. For example, the gentleness in Bai Juan's eyes when he looked at Aju. Perhaps he himself didn't think much of it, but others didn't think so. Bai Juan also could not control himself. He lowered his head and his thin lips landed on Aju's head. Aju raised her eyes to look at him and then reached out to touch her head. He was extremely cute. What about the back? Don't you want to put it on? Bai Juan raised his eyebrows and asked her. Aju raised the apron in her hand. Of course I want to put it on. Little brother, you have to be obedient and not move around. You have to cooperate with me. How do I cooperate with you? Bai Juan was amused. He used his free hand to wrap around Aju. He was not in a hurry to do anything. Aju stood in front of Baijuan. In addition, Baijuan's legs were very long. It looked as if her entire body was in his arms. The child was about to speak. A light laugh came from the other side. Grandpa Bai wants lapa vinegar. Baijuan you. Gu Rou obviously thought that such a scene would occur in the kitchen, so she was stunned. Baijuan reacted very quickly and circled Aju with one hand. He put down the porcelain bowl in his hand and said indifferently, "What's the matter?" "Oh, I'm here to get something." Gu Rou was indeed old Master Gu's favorite granddaughter. Even though she felt that there was something wrong with the situation in front of her, she did not say anything. Instead, she walked over nimbly with her hands behind her back. "I feel that you are very good at cooking. You cut it so beautifully. If I have the chance to try your cooking in the future?" Baijuan did not answer. Instead, he asked in a very indifferent tone, "What do you want?" "Lapa vinegar." Gu Rou was not affected by his attitude at all. Instead, her smile became even wider. "Grandpa Bai said that your Bai family likes to eat this the most." Baijuan did not say anything else. Instead, he lowered his head, took out a small jar from the kitchen cabinet and handed it to Gu Rou. Gu Rou took it and turned her head to Aju. "Aju, do you want to go with me? Guqing is still waiting for you over there." "I'll wait for you," Aju said as she helped Baijuan put on the apron. She tilted her head and asked, "Is it tight?" "No." Baijuan rubbed her head. The doting look in his eyes was obvious. "Do you want me to teach you how to cook?" Aju's eyes lit up. Then she nodded her little head heavily. In the future, if he was sick, she could also take care of him. Baijuan had always been patient when it came to dealing with Aju. First, he let Aju stand in front of the kitchen utensils. Then a hand came around from behind Aju. With the smell of fresh grass, he said in a pleasant voice, "Light the fire first. But in the future, when I'm not around, you can't light the fire alone. I can do it myself." Aju felt that she had been underestimated. Baijuan bent down and rested his chin on her shoulder. He laughed softly. "Have you forgotten the last time you went into the kitchen and burned the wire of Auntie Wang's beloved rice cooker? Little brother, Woolly Buddha said that if you see through it and don't say it out loud, you can still be friends." Aju clenched her small fists and said, "Don't always mention my dark history." Baijuan smiled again. His fingers held Aju's hand from behind as he taught the child how to make fried noodles bit by bit. "Put the oil first, then put the egg in. Be careful that there is no water in the oil pot. Put it in slowly." After Gu Rou took the jar, she did not leave. She just looked at the side of the youth's face. She had heard too many rumors about Baijuan. Every one of them said that he was cold and not easy to get close to. But when facing his sister, he was like a completely different person. Even if they were siblings, wasn't this kind of behavior a little too intimate? He first looked at Guqing, then his gaze fell on Aju as if he was asking. At that time she was indeed pulled by Guqing by the wrist, so Aju did not say anything. However, she did not want to continue this topic. This way, it was very likely that the matter of her buying a birthday present for her little brother would be asked. Therefore, she could only bury her head and continue eating the noodles. Guqing understood Aju's thoughts. He lazily said to Gu Rou, "Sister, can you stop talking? It's just a shopping mall. You even had to make 4 or 5 calls to accompany me to the mall before you came out. You even said that it was cold outside. It's just a shopping mall. All right, since you said so, I'll believe you." Gu Rou laughed as she spoke. She said to Old Master Gu, "Grandfather, look at how shy little brother is." Old Master Gu also laughed out loud. He couldn't help but look at Aju a few more times. He meaningfully said to Old Master Bai, "This grandson of mine is very different to Aju." Old Master Bai also laughed. Old Master Bai also smiled, but it was much fainter than before. He said, "Aju has been likable since she was a child. All the brothers in this courtyard like her. The little tyrant of the Li family and the one from the Shao family always give Aju whatever good food and fun they have. This child is born like this. It's not strange that Guqing is like this." What surprised Old Master Gu was that Old Master Bai did not follow along with his words. Instead, he pushed away his intentions. However, thinking about it carefully, the two of them were still young. It was indeed too early to talk about this, so he focused on drinking again. Ro did not ask Aju anymore. Instead she playfully nudged Gu Qing with her elbow. Tell me honestly, what did you and Aju go to the mall for? Nothing, it's the little bean she. Before Gu Qing could finish his words, Aju took a small bean paste bun and pressed it into his mouth. Auntie Wang is very good at making this. Eat one. Gu Qing had always been smart. He took the bean paste bun off his mouth and smiled. Hey. This boy was indeed very considerate of Aju. The two of them could be considered to have a common secret. Aju lowered her head and ate. She could not help but heave a sigh of relief. If Gu Qing had said everything just now, then what would she do about the surprise she had prepared for her little brother? Fortunately she did not expose herself. However, she did not know that when Bai Jun saw this scene, his entire body was almost motionless. Especially when Aju fed Gu Qing the bean paste bun that he had picked up for her, Bai Jun and even his fingers froze. In his memory, other than him, Aju would not feed anyone else. But now she was feeding a boy and they even had such a tacit understanding. The fire in the depths of his heart seemed to be able to burn his entire body. Sometimes Bai Jun always thought that it would be great if Aju did not grow up. If she did not grow up, she would always belong to him. But the reality was that not only had she started to grow up, but there would even be a day when she would leave him because of another boy. Swoosh. Bai Jun stood up. His eyes were covered by his drooping hair, revealing only the curve of his mouth. I'm going to the kitchen to get something. Chapter 1192. Aju subconsciously raised her eyes, but she only had time to see Bai Jun's back as he left. Gu Ro turned her eyes and stood up. She smiled and said, "Grandfather, you guys eat first. I'll see what Bai Jun wants to take and help him bring it over." After all, Bai Jun looked too normal. There was no trace of him being left outside. Other than Gu Ro, who followed behind him, no one knew that Bai Jun's left hand was dripping with blood. "Do you need me to help you?" Gu Ro's eyes narrowed at first, then she laughed cheerfully. It was as if she did not see his left hand as she said something beside him. Bai Jun stood there quietly and did not speak. When Aju walked over with the little white cat in her arms, this was the scene she saw. She originally wanted to go over, but that scene looked very harmonious. She could see that the little brother had come out with an excuse just now. She originally thought that the little brother had come out to smoke. But now it seemed that she had gotten something wrong. Aju looked at the backs of the two people for a long time. Then she lowered her head and looked at her small palm. Finally, she walked upstairs with her ears drooping. On the same day, Aju asked herself the same question twice. When would she look the same age as the little brother? After entering the room, the voices outside became softer. Aju sat cross-legged on the bed. She changed her meditation position, somersaulted, and finally lay on the bed. Her long black hair that reached her waist was scattered on the pillow. She was so beautiful that it was unbelievable. When Bai Jun pushed the door open and entered, this was the scene he saw. In his own room, Aju obviously did not have the habit of wearing long pants. Her beautiful long legs were exposed outside, and she was only wearing a very short pure white t-shirt. She was so pure that it was fascinating. Bai Jun's mind went blank for a moment. The heat from her body was so obvious that it was difficult for him to ignore it. Before he could even react, he reached out and covered Aju with the quilt. His eyes became a little heavy. "Don't wear this in the future, understand?" Although Aju was at a loss, she was very obedient. Bai Jun carried Aju with the quilt and put her in his arms as if to distract himself. "Why did you come up halfway through the meal? Are you full?" "Yes." Aju always felt that the little brother today was different from other times. It seemed that even his breathing was hot. Could it be that he was sick? Thinking of this, Aju reached out her hand and touched Bai Jun's forehead. "It's not very hot. What's wrong?" Looking at those incomparably pure big eyes, Bai Jun's hand tightened. "It's nothing. Human's body temperature will increase after eating." As he spoke, Bai Jun stood up. "Put on your clothes and go downstairs. Auntie Wang has cut the fruit that you like to eat for you." Aju nodded and was still very obedient. When she was eating the fruit, she was still worried that something would happen to Bai Jun, so she kept watching from the side. However, her little brother seemed to be too busy. After all, there were guests in the house. Adults like them had to sit together to discuss matters. For example, little brother and Gu Ro. Guqing looked at Aju from the side and lowered his voice. He said to her, "Little being, why don't you want your brother to know that you bought something for him? The day after tomorrow is little brother's birthday." Aju squatted at the side and teased the little white cat in a low voice. "I want to give him a surprise." Guqing raised his eyebrows in surprise. It turned out that the day after tomorrow was Baizhun's birthday. He wondered if his cousin knew about this. "Alright, that's all for today. We'll go back first." Old Master Gu stood up and said, "We'll go to the ski resort together tomorrow. You have to rest well." It turned out that the two old men had agreed to go on a trip together. Old Master Gu came to the Bai family at night to finalize the itinerary. Of course, Old Master Bai did not have any objections. After sending the Gu family off, he went upstairs to rest. Aju was also sleepy. She was very capable of laying out the quilt and other things. She placed the pillow at the head of the bed and even prepared the blanket. However, Baizhun said that he was going to sleep in the guest room today. Aju looked at the empty seat beside her. She turned left and right. Finally, she hugged the little white cat and pushed open the door of the guest room with her pair of white and tender feet. For some reason there seemed to be a very heavy breathing sound in the bathroom. Aju tilted her head to listen and took another step forward. "Who's outside?" Suddenly Baizhun's voice was heard. It was filled with a strong sense of hoarseness. Aju turned her body and hid in a corner. Could it be that he had heard wrongly? Baizhun frowned and turned on the shower again. The water flowed down his back as if everything was normal. However, what puzzled Aju was that it was winter. Why was the little brother still taking a cold shower? After Baizhun finished showering, he reached out and turned on the switch. He put on a white cotton t-shirt and shorts and walked out while drying his hair. Aju hid there and pressed her fingers between her lips, indicating for the cat on her head to be quiet. Baizhun first leaned against the head of the bed and lit a cigarette. He only took 2 puffs before putting it out. Then he picked up the wine glass beside him. No one knew what he was thinking. After about 10 minutes he finally turned off all the lights in the bedroom. He reached out and took off his shirt, revealing his well-defined abs. Baizhun indeed did not look like someone his age. He grew up in the courtyard. Although he had not joined the army yet, there would be people who would specially train him during the summer and winter holidays every year. The knowledge he gained was no less than anyone in the military camp. All of this was reflected in his perfect and slender figure. At night, Baizhun was definitely the Baizhun that Aju had never seen before. His entire body emitted a fatal coldness and extravagance. Gradually the night grew darker and darker. Aju estimated that it was almost time. Only then did she stand up and shake her slightly numb legs. Just like that, she carried the little white cat in her arms and tiptoed closer to the soft bed. Then she bent down and lifted the quilt. With her palms on the bed, she slowly crawled in with her head and body. Baizhun was asleep. In addition, he had drunk 2 glasses of strong wine, so he definitely would not wake up so easily. Even if she crawled in, he would not notice her. Aju's thoughts were very practical. Baizhun was indeed not as guarded as before. Under the moonlight, he looked like a quiet prince. Even his sleeping posture had a natural nobility. However, when Aju was halfway through, Baizhun's originally closed eyes suddenly lit up. His reaction speed could almost be described as a cheetah. In a flash, Baizhun pressed the bedside lamp with one hand and lifted the quilt covering his body with the other. Chapter 1193. Oh no, she had been discovered. This was Aju's first reaction. Aju herself was not on guard at all. Her small face was fierce and her expression was cute. She just arched her body and looked at Baizhun. Baizhun did not expect that the person who broke in would be Aju. He thought that it was a cat or something, so he was also stunned. Aju took advantage of Baizhun's pause to lie down on the bed and said very seriously, "I want to sleep in the guest room today." Baizhun directly carried her up by the waist. There was a smile on his thin lips. "No." "Why?" Aju's eyes would become clearer at night. Baizhun's voice was deep. "Because I'm more dangerous at night." Aju reached out and touched Baizhun's face. "It's not dangerous." Baizhun couldn't do anything about her. His original intention was to carry her back, but he couldn't bear to let go. "Then be good and don't move." I've always been very obedient, so I wanted to ask you why you've been avoiding me recently. Is it because I haven't been sleeping well recently? Then I'll change it a little now. Can we sleep together? Baijuan's eyes trembled. His fingers smoothed Aju's hair. You've always been very good. Good. When Aju treated him, she had always relied on him. When she was happy, she wrapped her arms around Baijuan's waist and rubbed her small face comfortably. Only then did Baijuan realize that his upper body was naked. His back suddenly stiffened and his body also heated up. So hot. Aju's forehead was still pressed against Baijuan's heart. She opened her eyes to see what was wrong with Baijuan. However, Baijuan did not let her see. He hugged her and said in a deep and pleasant voice, "Be good and sleep." Reality proved that Aju was still very obedient. In addition, with Baijuan coaxing her, she fell asleep in less than 3 minutes. The only person who did not fall asleep at night was Baijuan. He looked at the person in his arms. His heartbeat was so loud that he could not hide it no matter how hard he tried. There was also that damn reaction that should not have gotten up. Baijuan was glad that he did not drink too much. If he drank a little more, he was not sure if he would see something worse than a beast. Perhaps Aju would never know what he was thinking when he lifted the blanket and saw her. Baijuan's eyes darkened. His eyes followed the moonlight and fell on Aju's pink and tender face as he leaned over. Aju always felt that something was biting her when she was sleeping. It was probably a mosquito, but she still slept very soundly that night. The next day when the sun shone in, Baijuan was still naked. His beautiful upper body and tight abdominal muscles were young and powerful. Aju was held in his arms with one hand. She was pure and innocent. Gu Rou and Auntie Wang had just pushed open the door when they cried out with a pale face. Aju was woken up by this voice and rubbed her eyes with both hands. Baijuan's reaction speed was even faster. He raised the quilt and covered himself and the person in his arms tightly. He looked coldly at Gu Rou, who should not have appeared here. "Get out." Gu Rou's expression was very ugly, but she was also smart. She tightened her fingers and followed him downstairs. Auntie Wang did not expect Baijuan to sleep in the guest room today. Even Miss was there. "Miss Gu, it should take some time for young master and Miss to wash up. Do you want to sit in the living room for a while?" Gu Rou took a deep breath and recovered quickly. There was still a smile on her face. "There's no need. I smell the smell of alcohol in that room. Baijuan must have drunk yesterday and forgot that he was going out today. My grandfather and Grandpa Bai are already waiting outside. I'll have to trouble Auntie Wang to go up and urge Baijuan later." I was also shocked just now. I didn't expect that the siblings would sleep together. Miss has been with young master since she was young. Young master has long been used to taking care of her. Auntie Wang smiled and said, "Young master and young Miss have a good relationship, and young Miss is also obedient. Young master is also worried about young Mississippi. If young Miss doesn't sleep, who knows how many times young master will wake up just to cover young Miss with a blanket." Gu Rou really did not want to hear how much Baijuan doted on that child. What worried her was that Baijuan drank yesterday. However, since they had already slept together, there was nothing to be surprised about. In the end, her opponent was just a child who had not grown up yet. If it was a 17-year-old girl, perhaps Gu Rou's face would have already turned pale. But now, no matter how beautiful this child was, she was still young. She had lost to her physically. Gu Rou laughed and walked into the off-road vehicle in the courtyard. "Grandpa Baijuan is still sleeping. Let's wait for him for a while." Grandpa Bai did not agree with Gu Rou calling Baijuan for him just now. It was just that she ran too fast and he could not stop her. However, what made him feel strange was, Baijuan has never liked others entering his room. Why isn't he angry? "It's probably because he slept well last night," Gu Rou said with a faint smile. There was even a hint of red on her face. Grandpa Gu laughed. "I really can't treat them as children anymore. Look at them. A grown girl can't be kept at home." Grandpa Bai also smiled, but he did not say anything else. In the guest room that was dyed by the morning sun, Aju sat up straight half a beat later. She did not rub her eyes, but she was still not awake. Aju did not know why, but she had been very sleepy for the past half a year. Especially in December, she was even more sleepy. It was as if she was going to hibernate. For this reason, Baijuan specially bought a string of Bodhi seeds for her and hung it around her neck. Although the weather outside was good, the temperature would not lie. It was more than 10 degrees below zero. It was really unbearable to not wear a down jacket. Bai Jun saw that Aju was very sleepy, so he stopped Auntie Wang's actions and did not let her wash her face. Instead, he wet the towel with hot water and tilted his body to wipe Aju's face. Then he pulled over a small blanket and carried Aju downstairs. Master Bai had doted on the child countless times since he was young, so Auntie Wang did not feel that there was anything wrong with Bai Jun's actions. Instead, she was afraid that Aju would be hungry on the way, so she took out a thermos box. Inside was cooked vegetable porridge and steamed buns. It was enough for 2 people. She softly reminded Bai Jun to let her eat all of these when she woke up. On the other hand, Gu Qing, who was lying in the car, saw that Aju was wrapped up and went out. He really wanted to reach out and poke that exquisite little face. Aju was not completely asleep. It was just that her big eyes were dark. She sat obediently in Bai Jun's arms and nodded her little head time and time again. From time to time she would wake up when the car stopped. She would lean on the window and look at the endless snowy scenery outside. This Alaskan dog had even bitten a dog trainer before. Why was it as obedient as a cat in front of Aju? Thinking about it carefully, the little bean's affinity with animals was indeed surprisingly good. When she was in school, there would often be birds and the like landing on her hands. Could it be that animals also liked simple-minded people? Her mind would be filled with his face, even if he had always been very cold in front of her. But Gu Rou believed that one day he would be warmed up by her. Habits might be hard to change. In the past few years, Aju was the one who accompanied him. As long as she accompanied him in the future, there would not be any problems. Gu Rou waited in place with a smile. When Bai Jun finished skiing and walked over, she was the first to react. She held 2 cups of coffee in her hands and was about to hand one of them to Bai Jun. "Sister, aren't you guys progressing a little too quickly?" The person who spoke was Gu Qing. He had one hand in the pocket of his windbreaker, and his face still had his signature evil smile. He really did not look like the maturity that a person of his age should have. His other hand was still holding Aju, who had her head lowered. Bai Jun raised his gaze and fell on the hands that the 2 of them were holding. His hands, which were wearing ski gloves, could not help but clench tightly. The ski suit he was wearing was very big. It was a dark black coat, a fluffy hat and a pair of windshield glasses. There was a refreshing aura in his handsomeness. However, this aura seemed to have become very faint in that instant, so faint that it was somewhat lifeless. "Why didn't you take your phone?" This sentence was obviously directed at Aju. Aju touched her small pocket and realized that her phone was not on her. Gu Rou said, "Bai Jun, don't be angry with Aju. Aju must have had too much fun and forgot about her phone. Let's all go back. Grandfather and the others should have finished playing chess by now." Bai Jun listened from the side, his mind in a mess. If it was in the past, how would he deal with such a thing? He would directly carry Aju and make her remember to bring her phone next time. Otherwise, if he could not contact her, he would definitely be anxious. But now there was another person by her side. Moreover, Bai Jun knew very well that the current Aju did not want him to go over at all. She wanted Gu Qing to accompany her. Otherwise, when she saw him, she would definitely throw herself into his arms. But today she did not. No matter how unwilling he was, Bai Jun could not deny this fact. The wind became a little stronger and the snow and dust on the ground were blown up. The 4 of them walked one after another, and the snow would always make a sound when they stepped on it. Aju looked at the back of the figure walking in front of her. She thought about it but still did not speak. Because there was no need for her to speak. Someone had already walked to the little brother's side. Gu Rou tilted her head and smiled refreshingly. "You guys walk faster. If you walk slower, you won't have dinner." Aju stared at the back of the figure again. "No, that's not right. There were 2 figures now. They were very tall and they were also of the same age." The little brother seemed to be very obedient to the other party. When that person said to leave, the little brother took a step forward. With this thought in mind, for some reason her walking speed slowed down. This continued for a while. When she raised her head, the person in front of her had already left her by a large margin. This was a situation that had never happened before. In the past, no matter how slow she walked, the little brother would stop and wait for her. Or was it different now? Things between couples? Aju paused for a moment. She remembered that every time she watched Conan, Cindy and Xiaolan appeared at the same time. When they were very close to each other, the little brother would always reach out and cover her eyes. At that time she was still sitting in the little brother's arms and did not know anything. And over the years, other than the big dramas that Bailey Shangxie had acted in, Aju also watched some shows about animals such as People and Nature. Of course, there were also some food channels such as China on the tip of the tongue. There were also some divination variety videos. Aju was the most engrossed in watching this. Under normal circumstances, after watching it, she would say to Bai Juan, "The other party's divination is not accurate." During the summer and winter holidays, the Bai family watched these things almost every day. Master Li had once said that they had to be careful when they had a child at home. They could not watch any romance movies even if they wanted to. It would be fine if it was a boy, but they had to be careful when raising a girl. Thus, the current result was the result. When she was young, Aju grew up in a temple. In her little head, other than fasting, chanting Buddha and torturing people, she did not have any ideas. Later on, when she could recognize words, she would receive things and letters from her brothers. It could be said that if she did not go down the mountain, Aju would always take it for granted that she was a boy. After all, she was going to be the abbot of a temple in the future. Later on, finally, with the hard work of everyone, Aju changed her perception of being a girl. However, the nature of a child had already been developed, and with Bai Juan's protection. The 12-year-old Aju had indeed not come into contact with too many things in this aspect. Therefore, she was not clear about what Gu Qing had said. However, Gu Rou did not wake Bai Juan up. Seeing that Bai Juan was gone and the atmosphere in the hall was so lively, old Master Gu let people go to bed early. When they woke up the next day, they would be able to see the sunrise from the other side of the snow mountain. The rooms were booked by Gu Rou previously. Everyone had a room. Aju looked at the room that belonged to her. It was very big, but it was very empty. This was the first time she lived alone after coming out. At this time every day, it was almost time for her to recite the Buddhist scriptures. However, when she crossed her legs, her mind was indeed blank. Should I go and see little brother? Aju pinched the little white cat's tail. Little brother didn't eat at night. It's not good for his stomach. I hid some food for little brother just now. I'll send it to him before I come back. I definitely won't disturb his rest. The little white cat meowed. It was low and pleasant to the ears. The night outside was getting darker and darker. It was as if everywhere was dark. This was a little like Bai Juan's heart. He had drunk a lot of wine. He lay on the sofa in the hall with his long legs and feet. He raised a hand and placed it on the armrest at the side. He looked at the endless snow outside with a cold expression. There were 2 bottles of red wine beside the sofa. One of them was already empty and the other was half empty. Why didn't you call me when you were drinking? It was Gu Rou. She had let down her hair as if she had just taken a shower. She was wearing a set of extremely pure pajamas and sat beside Bai Juan with a light smile. Let me have a drink with you, Gu Rou said as she poured wine for him. Bai Juan, I like you very much. As she said that, she put down the red wine in her hand. Her fingers, which were dyed light red, pressed down on Bai Juan's hand. Her body also leaned over. I've never liked anyone so much. Bai Juan, we're the same kind of people. I know very well what you want. Chapter 1197. From the room in the corridor to the hall, there was only a glass window separating them, but it made Aju, who was walking over, stop in her tracks. She could not hear what the 2 people inside were saying. However, she could see it very clearly. The 2 of them were very close to each other. They were so close that it was as if they were sticking together. There was a stuffy feeling in her chest. It was bloated. Aju did not know how to describe that feeling at all. It was as if she had lost something. She thought of a lot of words, and every sentence was saying that she had taken up too much of her little brother's time. So, did her little brother also want to have more time to fall in love? Aju lowered her head and looked at the tip of her feet. She hugged the little white cat in her hand and felt that her fingers were cold. She did not want to stand here. This thought was stronger than ever before. The moment the moonlight shone down, the figure of the underage person outside the window disappeared. Gu Ro's aura continued to approach Baizhuan. Her lips were painted with a faint powder and she smiled pitifully. It was as if she was offering her entire body to him. Baizhuan shook his head. Then his eyes darkened. He pushed her to the ground and looked down at Gu Ro. His voice was very cold. I thought that Grandfather Gu's granddaughter would at least know what shame is. It seems that I still overestimated you. Gu Ro bit her lip. I did these things because I liked you. You drank so much wine. Do you know how worried I was about you? As she spoke, she stood up again. I know that you are not happy every day. We are in the same boat. Baizhuan, you can take care of Aju for a period of time, but can you take care of her for the rest of her life? She will only treat you as a brother. One day she will fall in love with someone else. You can drink today, but what about tomorrow? Right now, Aju does not put her mind on this. You are so strict with her. One day she will realize that the little brother she originally worshipped in her heart has other thoughts about her. When that time comes, how will she look at you? Baizhuan, be with me. I know what you are afraid of. Some secrets can only be better hidden when you have a girlfriend. Just take it as a try and give each other a chance, okay? And your body needs it too, doesn't it? You clearly reacted to me just now. Reacting to you? When Baizhuan heard this, he turned around and looked at Gu Ro. He smiled coldly. Do you think I'm reacting to you? The only one who can make me react is that woman you're talking about. Haven't you already analyzed what I'm afraid of? Then you should know what I was thinking when I was drunk. It wasn't because you got close to me, it was because I always had this reaction. You should be glad that your surname is Gu. Otherwise you can forget about keeping your hand. After Baizhuan finished speaking, he took a step forward. Gu Ro opened her mouth again, her voice filled with emotion. Even if I have to be her replacement, I'm willing. Looking at you like this, my heart really aches. Even if I only have her in my heart? Baizhuan's voice was very indifferent. Gu Ro nodded softly. I'm willing. Baizhuan looked at the endless snow outside the window and recalled how Aju was far away from him today. Perhaps one day when she found out about this, she would hate him. He didn't even know how to make her stay. When Baizhuan thought of this, his fingers clenched. Gu Ro saw that he seemed to be showing signs of loosening. She said in a low voice, as long as you need me, I will appear, whether it's to replace her or to prevent her from hating you. You should have seen that Aju likes to follow Gu Qing. She might not be able to notice it now, but what does that mean? One day in the future she will tell you that she is going to fall in love. What will you do then? Or do you still have this kind of thought like now? You should know what kind of person Aju is. The things she likes shouldn't change because of anyone, right? And Baizhuan, to be honest, when you are with her, don't you feel tired? There are many things that she doesn't understand at all. You are 5 years apart and you will always walk in front of her. She will never understand you. Why don't you try? Maybe after a long time you will be able to forget her? Even if you can't forget her, I will accompany you. I will definitely accompany you. After an unknown amount of time. Baizhuan did not speak, but his black hair covered his eyes. Gu Ro took a step forward and stretched out her hand. She looked like she wanted to hug Baizhuan from behind, but before her hand could touch Baizhuan's waist, the young man's voice sounded again. The young man's indifferent voice rang out again. He only said 2 words, no need. Gu Ro paused and looked at him in surprise. I don't want to. Baizhuan lowered his head and picked up the red wine beside him. His tone was indifferent. I don't want to treat anyone as her replacement. Because some people could not be replaced. Even if he could not get her, he would not use such a method to insult his girl. His Aju had been sitting in his arms since she was young, obediently accompanying him. There was only one Aju in the world who would feed him. What a joke. Why did he need someone else to accompany him? Aju was the one who had taught him this kind of thing for a lifetime. If he wanted someone to accompany him, it should be his Aju. Gu Ro looked at the tall and straight figure that did not let her touch him at all. Her hands were clenched tightly. She had never begged a boy so humbly before. How many people in the school were pursuing her? There were also those outside the school. Which one of them did not hold her in their hands? Why did Baijun not accept her? He was clearly so drunk that he could not even walk properly, but he did not agree to her request. Baijun had indeed drunk a lot, so that day he did not go to Aju's room as usual and cover her with a blanket. The night gradually darkened. Aju sat in front of the wooden door and did not return to the bed. Her small face looked somewhat absent-minded. Her mind kept recalling the scene she had seen before. She shook it back and forth twice and then again. But this time, no matter how hard she shook, she could not get rid of those images. She remembered what Guqing had told her about what couples would do. In the past, when her little brother kissed her forehead, she had never thought that it was a big deal. Her little brother had said that there should be a morning kiss when he went out in the morning, and there should be a good night kiss at night. They both fell on her hair. But she didn't know that if her little brother did the same thing to someone else, she would be so sad. It was as if she was sick and her chest hurt. She didn't want her little brother to find a girlfriend. But this thought was too selfish. It was really too selfish. Xiaobai, what should I do? Chapter 1198. Aju curled up her body and lowered her eyes. Her long eyelashes hit her fair little face, but her expression was still fierce. Woolly Buddha said that since you like someone you have to fight for it. But at the same time you can't destroy other people's feelings. Meow. The little white cat meowed and jumped onto Aju's head. Aju's fingers wrapped around its tail. How about this? Let's ask little brother together tomorrow. If he really has someone he likes, let's go home. Guqing is right. Little brother usually spends too much time on me, and I have never thought about whether he is willing or not. Everyone wants to be with the person they like. I can't take up so much of his time just because I am little brother's sister in name. I know better than anyone that my surname is not Bai. Meow meow. The little white cat meowed twice in a low voice. It jumped down and nudged Aju's hand with its head, meaning that it wanted her to go to bed and sleep. Aju closed her eyes, but the uncomfortable feeling of breathing could not be dispersed no matter how hard she tried. If only she could grow up a little more. The next day it seemed that everyone woke up very late except for Guqing. He dressed up refreshingly and put on his ski suit early. He did not care if Aju was still sleepy or not. He directly dug her out of bed. Hurry up and wash up. I got someone to make a very delicious sandwich. There's no meat in it. It's suitable for you to eat. Guqing was here. Everything was done with his identity and his work was also done cleanly and efficiently. Ever since he brought Aju out, the servants in the hall and the people from the club outside were all on standby, just so that their young master could have a good time. All the services were top-notch. Guqing even got someone to drive a racing car specially used in the snow. It was just right to bring the little bean out to enjoy the snow scenery. The car drove out and would not be back for a while. When Baijun went downstairs, it was 10 o'clock. He first went to Aju's room, but he did not see the person he wanted to see. Then he went to the hot spring behind the house. In the end, the servant told him. In the morning, Aju and Guqing went out and had not returned yet. When Baijun heard this news, his hand that was drinking water paused. BLK's mineral water bottle was almost deformed by his grip. From yesterday evening until now. 16 hours. Except for sleeping, the two of them were together. He had made preparations. What would happen if Aju met someone she liked one day? There were many situations. This included the fact that the first thing she did after waking up was not to look for him, but to look for someone else. As long as he thought of such a thing, he could not help but hold Aju's hand tightly. But now, Baijun realized that there was still a difference between imagination and personal experience. The former was just a little scared. As for the latter, every day felt like a year. Baijun had never felt that the hour hand on his watch was moving so slowly. He just stood there in the living room, his arm hanging by his side. The mineral water bottle fell to the ground with a dull thud. On the other side, Aju did not know why, but she was very sleepy. But in her heart she was thinking about getting that Alaskan Malamute for her little brother. When she was young, Grandpa Bai had mentioned that her little brother had always wanted to raise a big dog. Later on she came to the Bai family because of her small stature. She raised a large dog, afraid that it would pounce on her. After that, the little brother never asked about the large dog again. In fact, at that time, Aju had said that she was not afraid of being pounced on by the big dog. She could beat the big dog to the ground. But later on the little brother still did not raise it. He said that compared to those worldly things she was more important. He did not want her to have any accidents. Aju was very clear about how good the little brother was to her. Therefore she had to get this big dog from Guqing. She had to, "Hey, if you're tired, lean on my shoulder and sleep for a while." Guqing laughed evilly. "Don't worry, you're still wet behind the ears. I won't do anything to you." Aju did not say anything. Guqing drove the car in the snow and raised his eyebrows. What was going on? Why was it so quiet? When he stopped the car and looked back, he found that the person he pulled out had already fallen asleep again. She's really a little bean. Why is she so sleepy? Guqing was helpless. He could only drive the car back to the wooden house, but this time the speed was much slower. He stopped the car again. He took off the windshield on his eyes and threw the car key to the servant beside him. He bent down and carried Aju horizontally. "So light," Guqing muttered to himself. He always felt that the person in his arms was different from the girls he had touched before. However, it was quite interesting that she was so silly and cute. Guqing walked into the hall, but he did not see anyone get up. He placed Aju on the soft long sofa. The sofa was covered with the softest plush cushion. When Guqing put Aju down, he didn't know why, but his eyes seemed to be unable to move away from that young and tender little face. Guqing had always known that the little bean was very good-looking, but he had never thought that the closer he looked, the more he wanted to look. He reached out his hand and his body also moved closer. But before Guqing's kiss could land on Aju's face, his wrist was pulled up forcefully by someone. There was a bang. Guqing's entire body was thrown out by a strong force and he crashed into the coffee table beside him. He narrowed his eyes and looked dangerously at the person who came. It was Baizhuan. The other party did not say a word. He just looked down at him. That gaze was bone-chilling without the slightest bit of warmth. If it wasn't for Aju rubbing her eyes behind him, she would have called out in a daze, "Little brother." At that moment, Guqing even felt that Baizhuan would kill him. He could clearly see that the hostility in Baizhuan's eyes faded bit by bit. Then Baizhuan turned around, squatted down and rubbed Aju's eyes. "Are you still sleepy?" "Yes." After being together for a long time, any action would become a habit. After confirming that the person standing in front of her was Baizhuan, Aju subconsciously stretched out her hand. Without thinking, she wanted Baizhuan to carry her up. Her actions were very cute. Of course, Baizhuan would not refuse. He carried her up and did not even look at Guqing beside him. He walked towards his room just like that. After putting Aju down, Baizhuan first wiped her face. He could not bear to see the dirty look on his girl's face. Chapter 1199. Once one's thoughts were fixed, it seemed to be very difficult to jump out of it. No matter how smart a person was, they would always feel uneasy when it came to love. Even Baizhuan was the same. Aju did not know why she was sleeping so soundly. She did not wake up until noon. When Baizhuan turned to look at her wrist, he realized that the originally jade-like Buddha statue had started to become a little dirty at some point in time. The Buddha statue was specially used by him to protect Aju. Logically speaking, there should not be such a change. What was going on? Baizhuan stood up with a dark look in his eyes. As he walked out, he made a call. He seemed to be contacting the seller. The person who sold the Buddha statue also had some skills. "Young Master Bai, from the first time I saw her, Miss Jiu had a Buddhist affinity. Such a person was very rare in this world. She could not stand the turbidity of this world, but young Master Bai's righteousness could help her block these things. If young Master Bai was too far away from Miss Jiu, this kind of situation could indeed happen. However, since there was a stain on the Buddha statue, it meant that it had blocked the turbidity for Miss Jiu these days, so young Master Bai did not have to worry too much." After the call, Baizhuan walked back to the room. He sat by the bed and brushed his fingers across Aju's face. Then he hugged her in his arms. When Aju woke up, she smelled the most familiar scent on Baizhuan's body. She happily grabbed Baizhuan's clothes. Just as she was about to say something, she felt her stomach swell. It was very uncomfortable. When she lowered her head, she realized that her back was stained with a small patch of blood. Aju was instantly stunned. When she raised her eyes, she happened to meet Bai Juan's gaze. Aju's small face was even more stunned. Of course, she knew what had happened to her. When she was in biology class, the teacher had told her. Therefore, Aju subconsciously wanted to stand up and run to the bathroom outside the house. However, Bai Juan held her hand. It was rare for her to be confused. There are other people outside. Put on my clothes before you go out. No, that's not right. You better not get up. If you need anything, I'll buy it for you. Aju was obedient. She waited for Bai Juan to get up. Bai Juan looked at her and unexpectedly calmed down as well. He laughed softly and pressed his fingers on her head. He rubbed it back and forth and then stuffed her into the blanket. Wait for me to come up. Aju grabbed the corner of the blanket with both hands and nodded obediently. His stomach still hurt and his body felt like it was weighed down by something as heavy as gold. In the past, his teacher had said that those who came would be considered adults. Then wouldn't she be one step closer to little brother in the future? Aju was happy, but it was too awkward to move. Her stomach also hurt and she kept falling. Her body was cold and hot. She curled up and closed her eyes. Her fingers were clenched into fists as she pressed against her lower abdomen, but there was a smile on her face. On the other side, Lord Bai came out, but he didn't know what to do next. Without thinking, he dialed a number. The call was to Li Hailu. When a girl comes, what is more comfortable to use? Bai Juan's voice was very indifferent. Little gangster Li was still playing games. What do you mean by that? It's that. When Bai Juan said this, he had already walked out of the wooden house. Li Hailu bared his teeth. Fuck, my boss has become a spirit. What exactly is that? Bai period. As soon as Bai Juan finished speaking, the ski tourists who were still packing up in front all looked in his direction. Their expressions were very complicated. Li Hailu was so shocked that he threw the mouse away. What did you say? Don't repeat the previous question. Recommend a few brands to me. Bai Juan's voice became even fainter. Li Hailu stood up and he didn't care about the game anymore. No, why are you asking me such a question? I'm not a girl. Master Bai, do you think you're doing this kind of thing? No matter what, I'm still half a class belle. Just tell me if you know what's good for you. Bai Juan raised his eyebrows and sneered. Cut the crap. Li Hailu immediately said, I know, but this shouldn't be divided into brands. The cotton one is very useful. It's best to buy the lengthened one. Wait a minute, Bai Juan, why are you asking me this now? Don't tell me you're planning to buy it yourself? I'm hanging up. I'll contact you when I get back. After Bai Juan asked his question, he planned to hang up. Li Hailu was still shouting on the other side. Tell me clearly. Hey, Bai Juan. Bai Juan. Fuck. Li Hailu saw that he could not call Bai Juan back, so he simply turned his head to Shaolin, who was sitting beside him, and said excitedly, Did you hear that just now? Shaolin covered his left face and gestured for Li Hailu to look to his left. Only then did Li Hailu remember that he was not playing games at home, but at an internet cafe. He tilted his head slightly and saw that those who were not wearing earphones were looking at him. Their meaning was obvious. They were basically saying, how could a big guy like you know so much about women's products in such detail? Li Hailu really wanted to bury himself. His lifelong reputation was ruined because of that. However, after being annoyed, he still had to gossip. He held Shaolin's hand and did not care whether he was still fighting or not. Tell me what's wrong with Master Bai. Isn't it what you heard? Shaolin was very calm. Someone who can make Bai Juan personally buy this thing. Aju. Li Hailu slapped his forehead and was stunned again. Then with a look of regret he said, Why didn't we go skiing with them? We missed such a good show. Master Bai personally bought tampons. Thinking about that scene, it's funny. In fact, it was indeed the case. It was probably related to Bai Juan's temperament. It was indeed not appropriate for a person like him to stand in front of girls' products. Not to mention he even bent down and carefully selected them. The salesperson beside him kept looking at him. Bai Juan did not avoid it. Anyway, he had already come to this point. He simply walked to the salesperson's side and coughed lightly. It was rare for him to speak in a blunt manner. I want to ask, where is the brown sugar? The salesperson really felt that the boy in front of her was so handsome that he had an indescribable feeling. It was that kind of youthful purity. When she heard Bai Juan's voice again, she was instantly captivated. She even specially recommended ginger and brown sugar to Baizhuan. Baizhuan thanked her and bought almost everything that he could buy. The salesperson could not help but have a gossipy heart. You bought it for your girlfriend, right? Baizhuan paused for a moment before saying, yes. The salesperson was so charmed. Buying sanitary pads for his girlfriend was simply too heartwarming. She was about to reach out and hug Baizhuan's waist. She felt that there was a sudden earthquake somewhere. It was the position of her chest. It was clearly the same as before, the most familiar contact. However, her body was a little strange. Her heart was beating so fast. And for some reason she felt that she did not dare to look at little brother just now. Aju buried her face a little deeper. Baizhuan hugged her. Be good, go to sleep. At the beginning, Aju did not sleep because she would always unconsciously count Baizhuan's heartbeat. She also asked the question that she had always wanted to ask. Little brother, do you have someone you like? Baizhuan's body stiffened. Aju's heartbeat also stiffened. She really wanted to hear a denial. Although even Aju herself did not know why she wanted to hear Baizhuan say no. It was probably because if that was the case, little brother would only belong to her forever. However, the answer Baizhuan gave her was a very certain word. Yes. Aju moved her arm with difficulty. It came again. That kind of stuffy feeling in her chest. At this moment, Baizhuan directly covered her eyes. Child, don't ask so many questions. Go to sleep quickly. I'm not a child. Aju's voice lowered. It would be great if I could grow up faster. That way I wouldn't always be treated as a child by little brother. Baizhuan pushed her hair away. His eyes were dark, but he did not say anything. However, the real him, the selfish him, did not want Aju to grow up. Because when Aju grew up, it was very likely that she would not need him anymore. Just like the situation this morning, no matter how much he guarded against it, there was still someone else in her eyes. She did not know if it was because of her period, but when she got up and returned, Aju was much quieter and did not stick to Baizhuan anymore. Instead, she just sat there obediently, holding her little white cat in her arms. She thought about a lot of things. In the past, someone had said that she should not take up so much of Baizhuan's time just because she was his sister. At that time she could not think about these things. But now little brother said that he had someone he liked. She could no longer selfishly pretend that she did not hear it. Last night she wrote an email to her family. Her mother's reply to her was also the same. If the other party already had someone he liked, then don't force it. Because no matter how much you liked him, it was your own business. Even if you got the love that had hurt others, it was not open and above board. Little brother should want to be with the person he liked. But with her around, he was worried about her. Because in his heart she was still that child who always needed others to take care of her. A child. Aju lowered her head and looked at her hand that had not grown up yet. Her big eyes lost a lot of luster. Beauties, kiss me good night. Chapter 12:01. The next day Baizhuan and the others still had to go to class. There were only 7 or 8 days until the winter vacation. Under normal circumstances, high school would take the exam first and middle school would take the exam again. There was not much time difference. But at this moment, a very unbelievable thing happened in the high school department. Someone actually wanted to transfer in, and they wanted to transfer immediately. They were transferring to high school grade 3 class A. Not only were the teachers in the office surprised, but even some of the directors were surprised when they heard about this. It was already time for the exam. Why would they transfer? Moreover, the 3rd year of high school was the most important year. Wouldn't it affect their studies if they transferred? The teaching standard of number 1 high school was one of the best in the country. They didn't come early or late, but they were stuck at this time. Then would the students be able to follow their tutorials after they came? They had already finished teaching all the high school knowledge points when they were in their 2nd year of high school. Now they were in a state of revision. Students who had not listened to the lessons would probably find it difficult to adapt. Under normal circumstances as the school, they had to consider the other party's aptitude. Even if they wanted to transfer, they had to wait until after the new year. But this time it was very strange. The school's higher-ups did not say anything and directly arranged for them to enter high school grade 3 class A. Really? Or is it fake? A transfer student? It's true. I just went to the teaching office and saw it. It's a handsome guy, very handsome at the school bell level. Handsome guy? Come on, can he be more handsome than God Baizhuan? Even a few schools combined can't compare to him. The female student who revealed the news hesitated for a moment and said, "How should I put it? If you said this in the past, I could tell you with certainty that he can't be more handsome. But that person just now, he's not inferior to God Baizhuan. It's mainly because of his temperament. He's like a prince. You'll know when he comes." Is it that exaggerated? I don't believe it. God Bai is a player who can PK all the boys in the district. What kind of person can he? The student who was speaking suddenly paused, because outside the classroom, a young man in a white shirt walked over with a smile on his face. His hair was pure black and his lips were very good-looking. Especially his eyes, they were as deep as the legendary river of helplessness. When the light shone in, the reflection of the waves carried an indescribable beauty. However, there was a strong scholarly aura around him, as if all the noise could pass by him, leaving only the unique tranquility of a young man. With such an outstanding appearance, he would definitely attract everyone's attention. Even little gangster Li and Xiaolin, who were still playing with their phones and discussing where to go after school, raised their heads. "He's so long. Don't tell me." Li Hailu touched his chin and continued, "He can really challenge Lord Bai. Where did he come from?" Xiaolin narrowed his eyes and put down his phone. At this time the teacher walked in and greeted everyone with a smile. Come, students, sit down. This is a new student from our class. Let's get to know each other." "Teacher, what's the new student's name?" A boy shouted, then sighed and said, "He's so handsome. Can he go to another class?" The teacher burst out laughing. She adjusted her glasses and looked at the new student next to her. The young man took a step forward, a black bag slung over one shoulder, and wrote 4 words on the blackboard on the podium. The words were like the person as clear as jade. "This is my name, Helian Qingchen." Li Hailu raised his eyebrows. "A compound surname? Why did you choose such an ancient name?" "Helian. Hey Lindsay, you know a lot of people. There's no one with this surname in our circle, right?" "Indeed there isn't." Xiaolin picked up the carbon pen next to him and frowned. Li Hailu chuckled. "This is interesting. She can transfer to our #1 high school when the exam is coming. Isn't she from our circle? Could it be another family like the Gu family? You and I both know the Gu family." Xiaolin glanced at him. "Do you know this?" Li Hailu shook his head. He really did not know them. Logically speaking, although they were not familiar with the people in the business circle, they had seen them before. Why had they not even heard of this new student? Could it be that he really got in based on his strength? Wasn't it a little too unbelievable for him to come at this time? "Qingchen, the previous seats are all full. The exam is in a few days. You should sit in the last row first. After the exam is over, we'll arrange the tables for the school meeting." The homeroom teacher pushed her glasses again. She seemed to be in an exceptionally good mood. When Baizhuan saw this, he said, "There's no need to guess. He probably got in through the exam." "Why?" Li Hailu thought to himself. He hadn't even asked around yet. How did Master Bai know? Baizhuan finished the last math problem and closed the book. His voice was indifferent. The homeroom teacher's reaction. "When have you ever seen her smile at anyone other than me? That's because your logic is too abnormal." Li Hailu gritted his teeth. "You always get full marks. Even Abbess Miju is bewitched by you." Baizhuan was very calm. "Then look at how Abbess Miju is treating the new student now." After Baizhuan's reminder, Li Hailu noticed that Abbess Miju, who rarely smiled in a year, was in an excessively good mood today. Fuck, what's going on? Could the new student be Abbess Miju's son? Li Hailu was shocked by the homeroom teacher's enthusiasm. Xiaolin pushed the glasses on his face. "They don't look alike. They look different." Li Hailu thought for a while. This new student is too handsome. If he really is Abbess Miju's son, it would be a little against biological common sense. However, Li Hailu admired anyone who entered with their own strength. What did this mean? This meant that there was another abnormal top student in the class. At the very least he was on the same level as Baijuan. Perhaps there was such a thing as aura in this world. This was because when the new student passed by, Li Hailu really felt a gust of wind. He originally thought that he would just walk over. However, when he walked past, his gaze fell on Baijuan. "I heard that you are the first in this school?" His tone was very indifferent, and there was a faint smile at the corner of his mouth. However, in all these years, no one had ever dared to ask Baijuan such a question. Li Hailu subconsciously frowned. It was said that with just one sentence the new transfer student started a fire. Almost everyone in the class was discussing it. There were also people from the next class who ran over to watch. They were looking at none other than Hellion Qingchen. "Hey, have you heard? There's a new student in Class A." Chapter 1202. Of course I've heard. He's very handsome, right? He even dares to challenge Baijuan. He's really the #1 person in #1 high school. Didn't anyone dig up that transfer student's background? Coming at this time, his family background isn't simple, right? I haven't heard of any family background. However, some people said that he was specially recruited and that Abbas Miju personally set the questions. He can even pass the questions set by Abbas Miju? More than just pass. He finished it in half an hour and got full marks. He even wrote 2 solutions to the last question. Fuck, another top student. So what if he's a top student? His family background can't be compared to Baijuan's. I heard that he rode a bicycle and is very ordinary. Hellion Qingchen, who was said to be ordinary, was sitting in the classroom at this moment. Her slender fingers tapped on her left ear. It was just a black earring, but at this moment, it emitted a faint light. As I saw Baijuan. I'm in the same class as him. Hellion Qingchen held a pencil and chuckled. "Hey, you provoked him a little. Not bad. You're quite calm. Oh, no need. I can be here by myself. Brother, I have more money than you. You really don't have to always think about sending me money. If this goes on, your manager will cry. Don't worry, when I see a Jew, I will bring your gift to her. You have to film well and don't always make things difficult for Uncle Manager." "Hey, I know. You didn't make things difficult for him. You just went to the nightclub without even informing him. The last time you didn't see him, he even called me. To be honest, brother, to be your manager, you really have to be smooth and slick. There's no need to find someone. Have you forgotten that I'm very good at exams? It's quite simple to come in." "Hey, I know. I will take good care of myself." No one noticed that Hellion Qingchen was talking on the phone because he looked like he was reading English. He was holding a book in his hand and did not have any communication equipment. However, they did not know that sometimes books and ballpoint pens could be disguised. Who was Hellion Qingchen? He was the little boss of the ghost organization. At the age of 17, he could already take on deals alone. How could he do it without some hardware? Actually, going to high school wasn't difficult for him at all. The main reason was the email written by a Jew. Hellion Qingchen put down the thing in her hand and turned her head to look at Baijuan, who was not far away. Her eyes narrowed slightly. From the perspective of a brother, he really did not want a Jew to like such a boy. Because for someone like Baijuan, it was really difficult not to attract the likes of other girls. However, from what a Jew said, she already had someone she liked. Hellion Qingchen curved his thin lips. He didn't know why, but he had a feeling that things weren't as his little sister thought. Therefore he still had to observe. Hellion Qingchen twirled the ballpoint pen in her hand and then smiled again. No matter what, even if they couldn't meet often, it was still good to observe from a close distance in the same school. He couldn't always see his little sister, but he could see Baijuan every day. Originally, he could have brought a Jew home as soon as the spring festival arrived. If it weren't for that unexpected email, he wouldn't have appeared here at this time. Since he was here, he had to let the other party know that their Jew also had someone who liked her. Hellion Qingchen stood up and carried her school bag on her left shoulder. She put her hands in her pockets and walked around Shaolin and Li Hailu, who were standing in front of her. Li Hailu had never seen such an arrogant person before. Following that, he clenched his fists tightly. "Hey Shaolin, why do I have the urge to beat someone up? You can't beat him." Shaolin was indeed the most meticulous among them. There are calluses on his hands. He should have trained before. But I've also checked. He is indeed very ordinary. Li Hailu scratched his hair. I haven't felt so angry in a long time. The last time I was very angry was when I met a Jew for the first time. Bai Juan did not say anything but his eyes darkened. Xiao Lin raised his hand indicating that he should not mention a Jew at this time. Li Hailu also noticed that the atmosphere was a little wrong. Master Bai, did you and a Jew have a falling out? No. How could it not be? Do you think we are blind? Li Hailu could not be blamed for being so cautious. The main reason was that with Master Bai's falling out, it was very likely that he would be the unlucky one. He did not forget how Bai Juan had moved to his house that year and how he had come over. However, after so many years, the brother and sister had been on extremely good terms. How could they fall out just like that? Moreover, it was different from last time. This time, instead of saying that the two of them were falling out, it would be better to say that they were very much like a normal pair of siblings. That's right, it was really very normal. In the past, he and Xiao Lin both felt that Master Bai doted on a Jew too much, and a Jew was like a little tail. Bai Juan could see her everywhere he went. Although she was very obedient, she was not to be trifled with. Who dared to say anything bad about Bai Juan? That guy could practically lift a person up with one hand. He still remembered that in the past someone wanted to use a Jew to threaten Master Bai. He thought that a Jew was simple and did not have any tricks up her sleeve, so he used food to invite a Jew to the darkest alley behind the school. A Jew did go, but it was not for the food. Instead, when she heard that person's words, she deliberately followed that group of people to teach them a lesson. In fact, the so-called group of people were some students from number 3 high school who did not like Bai Juan. They probably did not expect that the person they had tricked was not a little white rabbit but a little tiger. Although the little tiger was a little dull by nature, it was always unusually fierce when it came to matters related to Bai Juan. With the way a Jew protected Bai Juan, to be honest, he and Xiao Lin might not be able to compare. Bai Juan was right about everything. This Master Bai also knew how to raise a child. But now no one knew why, but there was always such a feeling. A Jew was not as clingy to Bai Juan as before. Although she would still obediently follow him, she no longer took the initiative to get close to him. But if it was only a Jew who was like this, it would be fine. Even Master Bai's side was very strange. He actually learned to distance himself from a Jew. Why was this so? Li Hailu thought so much that his head was about to explode, but when he saw Bai Juan's absent-minded side profile, he was so silent that he could not speak. Chapter 1203. Guqing, the one from junior high. Master Li was confused. Isn't he just Gu Rou's younger brother? What does he have to do with our Master Bai? Xiao Lin glanced at him. He's a Jew's desk mate, and some people say that he treats a Jew very differently. Li Hailu immediately came to a realization. He turned his head to look at Bai Juan. We should indeed talk to him. How old is a Jew, right? Don't let him lead her astray. Was that the main point? Xiao Lin was speechless at his brother and pushed Li Hailu away. Bai Juan also stood up at this time. He held his wallet in his left hand, and his tone was so indifferent that no emotions could be seen. It's time. What do you want to eat? Xiao Lin was clearly trying to change the topic. Li Hailu exclaimed and was led out by Xiao Lin. However, as soon as the three of them walked out of the classroom, there was a commotion. Look at the person standing there. A beauty. There's someone so good-looking in our school? Idiot, look at the uniform. The top is different. It's not from our school. It's from the second high school. What the fuck, isn't this the school bell of second high? That's strange. Isn't there a class in second high today? Why did she come to our school? Are you stupid? It's lunch break now. Second high school is not far from our school. Isn't it normal to come and take a look? Normal? Although our first high school has a high enrollment rate, our conditions are not as good as second high schools. What's so good about her coming to our school? Wait a minute, could it be that she's here to see the school hunk? As soon as the girl finished speaking, Gu Rou waved at Li Hailu and the others with a bright smile on her face. She jogged over with a backpack on her back. Behind her were two beautiful girls. Hailu, you guys are so slow. One of the girls spoke. She was indeed pleasing to the eye. We've been waiting for you guys for a long time. Gu Rou even said that we might not be able to meet you guys if we didn't make an appointment in advance. How is it? Let's go eat together. I heard that the food in your school's cafeteria is quite delicious. Little Gangster Lee was really unprepared. He did not expect that they would come back at all. He was instantly speechless. For some reason the atmosphere was a little awkward. Gu Rou chuckled and said to the two girls, "Keep a low profile. After all, this is number 1 high school. Just follow them." Unfortunately, wherever Bai Juan was, people would always look askance. It was the same even when they went to the cafeteria. The middle school and high school students ate in the same cafeteria. The difference was that the high school students seemed to have more pocket money than the middle school students. They would go to the second floor of the cafeteria to order a small fry. Aju liked to eat vegetarian food and had always been easy to get rid of. Moreover, Auntie Wang doted on her. She always felt that the food in the school cafeteria was always a little worse than the food at home. Therefore, usually, Aju would carry her lunchbox and go to the small stir-fry window on the second floor with the little white cat on her head to wait for Bai Juan. It was the same this time. However, what Aju did not expect was that other than Bai Juan and the others, Gu Rou and the others were also following behind them. The girls were all very enthusiastic. One by one they greeted Aju and whispered, "So cute." They stood beside Aju. Gu Rou had a smile on her face. She put her hands behind her back and said intimately, "Aju, we meet again." Yes. The white cat on Aju's head was still wagging its tail. For some reason it suddenly straightened its body and looked outside the cafeteria. Gu Rou did not pay attention to the animal. She smiled lightly and said, "Aju, go over there and sit for a while. You carry the cat, so don't walk around the cafeteria. It's not convenient." "Tell me what you want to eat. Your brother and I will go and order for you." "No need." Aju held the lunchbox in her hand and didn't care much. "I brought food." Gu Rou didn't say much. "All right then, we'll order whatever we want to eat." "Yes." Aju placed the lunchbox on the table. The white cat jumped down and stood to the side. Bai Juan walked over and said, "If the food in the lunchbox is cold, tell me." "It's not very cold." Aju reached out and touched it. In the past, the two of them would stick together whenever they met. Now, although they could still talk to each other, Bai Juan still did the same things as before. Even the lines were the same. However, Li Hailu and the others could feel the alienation between them. They still had to order the food quickly. After all, there was not much time to rest at noon. After eating, they still had to go back and lie down for a while. That way they would be energetic for the afternoon class. Of course, no matter which school it was, the cafeteria was equivalent to a battlefield. Everyone lined up like warriors in order to get the best food. Usually at this time when Bai Juan and the others appeared, although it would cause a commotion, it would not be like today where many people stayed to watch. The arrival of Gu Rou and the other two girls simply ignited the gossipy hearts of many people. "They even came to our school's cafeteria to eat? Could it be that the two of them were really together like the rumors said? Is one of the other two senior brother Lee's girlfriend? No. I still want to confess. The girls from second high school are better looking than those from first high school. No matter how good looking they are, people still like Bai Juan. This era of looking at faces is simply enough." Although there would occasionally be one or two words of envy and jealousy with Bai Juan's character, more people felt that the two of them were very compatible. There was no one who did not like to see the combination of a handsome man and a beautiful woman. There were a lot of discussions downstairs. After all, there were not many seats upstairs, so people only looked and did not say anything. When Gu Rou walked past, there was still a smile on the corner of her mouth, which won the favor of many people. "Oh right, Hailu, I heard that there's a new student in first high school?" a beautiful girl asked from the side. "He looks quite handsome?" Li Hailu raised his eyebrows. "How did you know?" "This transfer student is extremely popular. That provocative sentence of Bai Juan has been posted on our school's Tieba." The girl smiled and said, "Just listening to his tone is quite cool, but I still don't know what he looks like. If he provokes you again, what do you plan to do? In so many years, this is the first time someone's discussion can drown out yours." Li Hailu placed the stir-fried dishes on the table. "Then let people talk about it." Gu Rou chuckled when she heard this. "It seems that even our little tyrant has been angered by the other party. All right, don't worry about it. Hurry up and order some food. The new student still doesn't know who he has provoked. When he finds out, he will definitely regret what he has said. You're tuning in to the Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.